I will talk to you.
We found them. They got our letters. She refuses to give order.
Andrea.
So you can't really
Haley, how
make
are
sense to her. She doesn't understand it.
you?
I want to follow.
This is supplementary stuff to go if you're going to go into.
Just keep them all queued up, you'll never know.
Welcome to our world.
That's all right. That's our strategy.
What's our strategy? I want to hear this.
Good morning and welcome to the Seminole County Board of County Commission Budget Work Session. The date is June 17th, 2025. If I would be kind enough, if you would silence all your cell phones, any of your other electronic devices, we would appreciate that. We're going to have Kurt from SGTV lead us in prayer this morning, and then I have Commissioner DeLaurie lead us in the pledge. Please stand.
In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. Heavenly Father, we just give you thanks and praise, Lord, for another glorious day in your name. Lord, we thank you for so many blessings that we receive here in Seminole County. And Lord, as we begin this budget session, we just ask for your grace, your wisdom for all the commissioners, for all of our county staff, to work through these tough decisions that need to be made, Lord, and pull out the positive things that will help make Seminole County continue to shine. Yes, it's not easy, Lord, but we know that when we rely on your assistance, your help, all things are possible. And so we just thank you for the gift of this county and for all of our employees. We thank you, Lord, for our freedom in our country, and we just ask to continue to pray for those that are afflicted by war, especially the conflict in Israel and with Israel and Iran. We pray for peace, Lord, and we pray that we will continue to be protected by the brave men and women that put their lives out there each and every day, our military, to keep us safe. And back here at home, we thank you for the gift of our fire department, our police department, EMS, and all those in public safety that continue to safeguard each and every one of us. And we ask this through Christ our Lord. Amen.
Please join me in the pledge. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States
of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Kurt, and thank you, Commissioner DeLaurie. We sincerely appreciate that. We're going to start this morning. We're going to have our first presentation, which will be Lynx, and we're going to have our county manager, which this is his budget at this point, open up. We will have public comment towards the end when everybody has presented their budgets for us to have review, and then the board will have discussion later this afternoon. We will break promptly at 12:30 or slightly before then because we have commissioners that have commitments during lunch hour. We will reconvene at 1:30 or close thereabouts. Mr. Gray.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Commissioners. So today, first I want to run through the agenda for this morning. As you had mentioned, we did not finish all the outside agency at our May 20th meeting, so this morning we'll kick off with Ms. Hawkins from Lynx. We also have our tax collector here, J.R. Kroll. Then we're going to move right into this morning our public safety presentations departments, and we'll lead that off with our sheriff, with Sheriff Lima, followed by Chief Kinley and Alan Harris from the fire department and emergency management. Chairman and Board, if any of those go a little longer or what expected, we can bump this in the afternoon, however the Board feels.
Sure.
Again, we'll break for lunch, and then in the afternoon, we will focus on our general fund departments this afternoon with Development Services and Mr. Gomez, followed by Allison Thal in our Community Services Department. Mr. Durr will be here to talk about our Parks and Rec Department. Chad Wilski will then discuss fleet and facilities and some of the things that we're doing in that area, and then we'll close for the general fund departments with our information technology team will be here. We would like to reserve the late afternoon for Mr. Jex. He is going to discuss our proposed budget and our general fund overview. Then following that, our next step will be in July. On July 22nd, we'll have a work session, and then we'll do our main operating departments, utilities, environmental services, public works. And at that time, if the board is ready, we can set the millage for the trim notice.
Okay,
So
very good.
with that, I do have a few opening comments, if you would like.
Please.
So as we began this year's workshop, I wanted to take a moment to reflect on the path that brought us here. This has been one of the most complex budgets we faced, not just because of this year's numbers, but because of the long-term challenges that have been building over time. Some of those pressures were eased temporarily during the pandemic with the federal relief funding, but underlying issues were really the issue, as rising cost, a growing population, structural limitations in our revenue have all remained. That's why we began this process earlier than usual to ensure that we had time to review options, collaborate across the departments, and have honest conversations about where we're headed. This first slide that you will see is the total proposed county budget for FY26. It's just over $1.2 billion. That's an increase of approximately 12% over last year's adopted budget. This increase is not driven by expansion, but the rising cost of maintaining essential services, including increased service demands, contractual cost, and capital needs. Our population continues to grow, and with that comes more demand for services. This budget reflects our commitment to keeping pace with that growth while staying responsible with taxpayer dollars. The next chart provides an overview of how our unrestricted countywide revenues are allocated. Public safety remains the largest share, a reflection of both community priorities and the operational reality of keeping pace with demand. Other areas include infrastructure, stormwater, roads, and general government. These categories don't shift dramatically year to year, but the costs continue to increase. This next slide really focuses on our ad valorem property tax, which is our backbone of our general fund. This slide shows how dollars are allocated, with the largest share going to public safety. That includes fire, emergency medical services, the sheriff's office, and emergency communications. The remainder supports general government functions, such as the court operations and reserves. These are essential functions, and the cost to deliver them continues to grow. Knowing the scale of the challenge ahead, as you all know, we started early this year. In January, I began meeting with each of you individually to preview the forecast. In March, we brought forward options and scenarios at the board's strategic planning retreat. Then in April, we brought together leadership from across the organization for a workshop focused on identifying cost-saving ideas and efficiencies. For the first time, we also shared early budget considerations with our constitutional offices, helping align the entire organization around the fiscal realities and creating synergies in our approach. All of this was done in advance of today so we could approach this budget with transparency, clarity, and a shared purpose. The next chart on this slide reflects the requested base operating budgets for the departments in fiscal year 26. This does exclude our grants and other restricted funds and personnel impacts from the proposed limitations. We are looking to eliminate 10 FTEs. These are the annual operating budgets for all major funds, and as you can see, all of our base budgets for all of our departments have decreased. This next slide also provides a department-by-department view of the proposed full-time equivalent positions for fiscal year 26. Again, in total, 10 FTEs are proposed for elimination, primarily through attrition. These changes are still under review, and the final decisions will be made during budget adoption. We approach these proposed reductions thoughtfully with a focus on preserving the essential services while addressing long-term cost pressures. The next, as you all have seen, what we have talked about over this last couple of months is our seminal moments. And this year we tried something new. Across the country, governments are using AI-driven tools to identify budget efficiencies. We did some of that too by working with a local graduate student to run data-informed models on county operations. But we also knew that algorithms alone don't understand community impact. So in April, we brought together real people into the room. Leaders from across the organization came together for a full-day efficiency workshop. That collaboration produced 42 actionable strategies, cost-saving ideas that came from within. We call these seminal moments, as they reflect a shared commitment to the public service and fiscal responsibility. We followed up with more than 24 meetings to refine the proposals, and we didn't stop at ideas. We made real structural changes. Again, eliminating 10 positions through realignment and attrition. We consolidated internal services, recalibrated base budgets, deferred or redesigned non-essential capital programmatic requests. These aren't across-the-board cuts. They're smarter ways of doing business and they are already in motion. And that's what responsible budgeting looks like, just not balancing the numbers, but improving how we serve. This next slide focuses on the BCC department's operating budget. It excludes, I just already talked about that. Hold on. Sorry, my notes were, what's the next one, Tim? Is that the last one? All right, sorry. These numbers reflect the real impact of the work our teams have done. The Seminole Moments initiatives alone are projected to be $3.1 million worth of savings, and if you look over 5 years, it's a $25 million impact to our organization. Combined with the reductions in personnel and operating costs, along with our deferral of select capital projects, we've generated meaningful internal savings. And these savings are already built into the FY26 budget. This wasn't just about identifying efficiencies, it was about acting on them as well. And that's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
Well, thank you very much. We will now move to Lynx, Ms. Tiffany Hawkins. Welcome to Seminole County, and good morning to you and your team.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners. Thank you for having us today.
If all your speakers would just identify themselves when it's appropriate for the record, we'd appreciate it.
Absolutely, Mr. Chairman. Today I'm joined by our CFO, Lenny Antman, and our Director of Finance, Michelle Daly. I also have Mr. James Boyle, our Chief Development Officer, who you and your staff have become very acquainted with over the last year, as well as Matt Friedman, our Director of Marketing and Communications.
Great. Please proceed at your time.
It is not advancing.
Maybe too far away.
Okay. Thank you.
There we go.
All right. Today's outline will be brief before I turn it over to Lenny. I do want to say and set the stage that we understand that the commission is moving forward in a microtransit direction. Our staffs have been coordinating. We have our next meeting on Friday to discuss transition transfers with not only Lynx but Sunrail. So this budget process for FY26 is going to be very iterative. And I say that because historically we've had to do that. This is not the first time a funding partner is making a service change. As we get through the budget process, things will change. Things will become more clear on dates and services. So please keep that in mind as we talk about base case budget and alternative scenarios when we get to that part. We'll get to the next slide. Thank you. Just real quick on FY24 as it relates to Seminole County. not only in FY24 for ridership, next slide, please, but we had some highlights in calendar year '24. Lynx Central Station celebrated 20 years of its opening from 2004, and 30 years of Lynx doing business as it currently stands. The transition with Tri-County Transit and the Central Florida Regional Transportation Authority began in 1992, and it concluded in 1994. And so we are kind of going through that same thing with Sunrail as we speak, and it will be very timely. So currently today, Seminole County has 12 local routes, 2 neighbor link routes. We have our span of service starting at almost 5 a.m. going to almost 1 a.m. Frequency on some peak is every 20 to 30 minutes. The majority is on our headways. The ridership in Seminole County for fiscal year '24 is 7,700 weekday boardings. Those numbers have increased from what you all have been seeing last July as well as November in discussing microtransit. And then we have 2.1 million passenger trips in Seminole County. And again, some of those routes are shared with Orange, and that ridership is included in those routes. Next slide. And just hitting on our access links for FY24, we had 113,000 trips in Seminole County alone, with a ridership of 127,000. Those numbers are different because some of our access links passengers do have attendants and caregivers. And you can see that the ridership on access links over the last 5 years has increased, and the number of eligible clients in Seminole County is about 2,400 eligible access links clients. That does not mean that they are all riding during the year, but that is who is eligible to ride access links, and they do go through a 2-year recertification. Next slide. We do know the upcoming changes will have an impact, so we are working through how do we coordinate the messaging, not only with Lynx and the microtransit provider that you all have chosen. We don't look at them as just Lynx passengers or the microtransit passengers. They're our riders. So making sure that we are the folks that rely on public transit and that will be utilizing microtransit understand what is getting ready to change for them. So again, that process has been collaborative and iterative and will continue to be so as we move through this transition phase with Seminole County. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Antman to walk through the budget and go through the request. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, and if I could just ask you all to pull your microphones as close as you can to you, so the audience
Is that
can hear
better?
you. Thank you.
Thank you.
And don't be afraid to speak into it.
Not shy. Next. All right, so the key budget assumptions that we built for this year include to maintain the fiscal year '25 level of service as it is currently, and I'll remind you that is for the base case budget we're doing. We did do an alternative scenario where we took consideration the suggested changes that Seminole is planning on, and so we'll get to that separately. We currently include no fare increases, although there is a pending fare analysis study that is about to begin, and based on the outcome of that, the board will make a decision on future fare changes. Federal preventive maintenance funding will be at the $6.8 million. Funding partner contributions will be based upon the approved regional funding model policy. Fleet replacements to right-size the fleet and provide safe and reliable service. And also, passenger amenity program and facility improvements are included in our capital program. Next. So the budget itself, next, is for fiscal year '26 is at $222.8 million as compared to fiscal year '25 at $211.2. It's an increase of $11.6 million or 5.5%. I can tell you, in going through the budget, Lynx staff work very diligently to try and control costs and keep things as flat as possible. Majority of the increases, you'll see it when we get to the expenses, are in wages due to contract increases and purchase transportation for paratransit. The bulk of the rest of the budget is very flat year over year. So on revenues, we did include a $1 million increase on fare revenue, and that's based upon the current trends. We are seeing a little uptick on ridership, both on paratransit and fixed route, and so we tried to build it in and included a $1 million increase. Moving down to interest and other income, we're actually budgeting a $1.2 million decrease over the current budget because the interest revenues that we have are based on the balances and current interest rates. As we utilize those reserves in our budget stabilization fund, the balances available to our interest are decreasing, and also it's anticipated the interest rates will start to go down over the course of the next year. And so that is a decrease of $1.2 million. Most of the other revenue sources are very flat year over year. The local funding partner increases are at 15.5%, as reviewed and agreed upon with the Finance Audit Committee and oversight groups. And then the budget stabilization funds used to balance the budget for fiscal year 26 come in at $19.3 million, a decrease of $4.8 million as we get closer to full funding by the funding partners. Next. And so the revenue as a whole is the $222 million. Out of that, 73% of it is provided by local revenue. As I'm sure everybody's aware, Lynx has no dedicated funding. After the 73% from local funding, we have 10% that we receive from customer fares, and then it goes down 7% in state revenue, 6% in federal revenue, and then 2% each for advertising interest and contract services. Next. On the expense side, also an increase of $11.6 million, as it is a balanced budget, 5.5%. Wages and benefits are going up year over year by $8.5 million, and that's broken out into a couple of areas. The actual wage increases associated with union contracts are at $4.6 million. Other significant increases that are in there is the additional staffing for 9 operators for the Orange County ATSB program at $700,000, pension cost increases at $1.3 million, and medical cost increases at $1.1 million. From there, we move down to other services, a $740,000 increase. The lion's share of that is associated with a contract that we had entered into this past year for bus shelter trash pickup and maintenance. That's 640 of the 840, and the balance of that increase is associated with security services for the new Pine Hills Transfer Center that is about to open. After that, we move down to purchase transportation. That's an increase of $2.5 million year over year. That $2.5 million is broken down as 1.8 associated with the contract CPI increase, and $700,000 associated with projected increased trips that will be performed. So once again, out of the 11.6, if we take the 2.5 for purchase transportation and the salaries and wages, that accounts for $11 million of the 11.6, and the rest of it is the contract associated with picking up trash at the bus stops. So the balance of the rest of the budget, there's some pluses and minuses, but it's all relatively flat. Next. The expenses are broken out as 59% for wages and benefits, 19% for purchase transportation. Purchase transportation is largely purchased labor for performing those trips. So in total, we've got 78% of our total cost is wages and benefits. After that, 6% for fuel, 6% for other services, which includes professional fees and contract maintenance, 5% for utilities, and 5% for materials and supplies, which includes maintenance of our facilities and our buses. On the capital budget, the budget for fiscal year 26 is projected to be at $188 million versus the $145 in the current fiscal year 25 budget. That's an increase of $43 million. We did not get a increase in funding available as an ongoing basis. We did have a couple of special grants that were provided to us that account for that large increase. It's a one-time thing. We received a grant from FTA to purchase for $27.6 million to purchase 30 CNG fixed route buses. We also received a Protect grant at $5.8 million, and we're also receiving $3 million a year from Orange County towards additional shelters. Next. It is a fully funded budget. The lion's share of it is federal funds at $173.8 million, state funds at $2.3, and local 11.9. Now, the local includes about $8 million from Orange County that's built up for their ATSP program, and the other $3 million and change is the $3 per service hour we get from the funding partners as matches on federal grants, federal and state grants. Next. So out of the total $188 million, 92.4% is federal funds, 6.4% is local, and 1.2% is state funds. Now, normally, the local would be down around the state level this year because of those Orange County funds, where it's a little bit higher. Next. Now, the program itself is broken out into categories. The lion's share of it, usually almost half of all of the funds that we put into the capital program are for vehicles, so we can rolling stock to provide revenue service. Out of those vehicles, it includes 80 vehicles for fixed route, CNG fixed route buses. 50 of those are rollover vehicles, and the balance are new vehicles to be purchased next year. On paratransit, includes 111 vehicles. 65 of those are new, and the balance will roll over where they're ordered and waiting for them to come in. And on van pool, 125 vehicles, 50 of them are new, 75 are rollover. On facilities, it's just short of $67 million. It includes a couple of major items. We have $11.5 million put aside for HVAC replacement in our 3 major facilities, $7.1 million for window replacement at the LCS office tower and station area, and $36.8 million put aside towards Southern Operation Base for land purchase and design and planning. Passenger amenities, $19.3 million. That includes $8.5 million from Orange County for the ATSP program for additional shelters in Orange County, and the balance of it is associated with the traditional shelter program for the 3 counties. Okay, next. So out of that, 49.2% is for vehicles, 35.6% is facilities, 10.3% passenger amenities, and then technology and support bring out the rest. Next. We get to the actual funding section. 74.3% of the funds that we're requesting come from Orange County, 13% from Osceola County, and 12.7% Seminole County. Next. Looking at it, the fixed route enabling service for this year is coming in at $87.9 million, as opposed to the 25 budget of $78.1. Paratransit at $34.8, and Sunrail feeder routes. Normally, the Sunrail feeder routes would be inward fixed route, but last year we started transitioning to the partners paying for it versus the states, and so the budget included 9 months of funding, so we kept it out separate, as in fiscal '26, it'll be 12 months of funding, and so you see the significant increases. It's the annualization of the funding process. So Sunrail in total coming in at $1.7 million. Next. Leaving our total operating request at $124.4 million for fiscal year '26. And capital contributions, which is the $3 per service hour for matching on grants, at 3.8, bringing the overall funding to $128.3 million. Now, as this applies next to Seminole County, the request is On fixed route and paratransit, just short of $9 million, 8.9. Paratransit, 6.2 million. Center Rail feeder routes, $770,000. Total operating at 15.9, and the capital contribution at $376,000, bringing the total request to $16,280,000. Now, the one thing I'll point out is I have on there the other scenarios. I wanted to point that out. These scenarios are not based upon the latest current conversations going on with our planning department in Seminole County. These scenarios were built off of the presentation in April to this board. We took those projected route changes and fed it into our models to come up to give us an idea of what the alternative solutions would be. And so if we were to go live with the changes January 11th, instead of 16.3 million, it would be 11.6 million, a savings of $4.7 million to the county. And if it were to go live October 1st, it would be at $9.5 million, a savings of $6.7 million to the county. But again, I just wanted to, it's probably fairly close to where it's going to end up, but it's based upon the April model that was presented. So there have been some tweaks to the actual service levels, and until we actually have a final go-live date, these numbers will fluctuate slightly. If there are any questions, I'll try to answer them.
Any questions from the board?
You want to start? You're on the Lynx board, so you start.
Yeah, I saw you start to lean, and I thought, okay, I'll let you go. One
No
of the
disrespect, but I think you should take points since you're on that
Well,
board.
thank you. One of the things that we talked about during the Lynx board meeting last month, was it last month? Time flies. When we looked at the capital budget, one of the things that I noted, Lenny, was that you had about $1.3-ish million allocated for capital investment in Seminole County. And when I asked what that was, you said it was for new bus shelters. And I said that I didn't think that that was probably necessary, given the fact that we're talking about removing routes significantly, and I don't know why we would be planning for additional shelters. So can you talk about whether or not you've removed that from the budget, or what your thought?
Yeah, well, and that's a combination. It's new shelters and renovations of existing shelters that have been out there for a long time. But there's still a significant number of routes and shelters that are out there, and we don't want to preclude Seminole County if on the remaining routes there was a need for shelter. We want to make sure funding was available. If it's not, it could always be reallocated.
Just wanted to bring that to the board's attention. Given that salary and benefits is the largest portion of any organization's budget that involves people. I mean, that's the largest portion of our budget. One of the things that we had talked about quite some time ago was when I was kind of trying to get a handle on where there might be some cost savings and efficiencies in the Lynx budget, was we talked about benefits and the plan design of the benefits that are currently being offered to Lynx, and would there be an opportunity to see some cost savings? And we left that conversation kind of open, and I just wondered if you could tell me what you all have done in the way of working on your health benefits plan design for cost savings.
We did. As a follow-up to the conversation that you were involved with the Gearing Group, they did an analysis on what it would be, and essentially you have two providers, Cigna or United Health, that they could compare costs to, and it was comparable. As far as what we are doing now versus moving what United, we are with Cigna, United Health. We go to contract negotiations next year. And so there are some opportunities in that plan design that we can walk through with the board as we are getting ready for negotiations. So 85% of our employees are under union contract.
Right, and after reviewing the contract, what I picked up is that the design of the plan is not something that's negotiable. That's not one of the things that's negotiated. It's that you would offer benefits, which is completely reasonable, but the plan design would be something that would be under the auspices of the organization. So I'll be anxious to hear how that goes moving forward.
Anything else?
Not for now. Thank you.
Commissioner Constantine, do you have anything? And by the way, for those that are feeling chilly in the room, I have asked staff to elevate the temperature a little bit. I know if I'm feeling cold, it's got to be cold. Commissioner?
Thank you very much. I'm not going to dwell on the costs or everything like that. I think we've all worked this out pretty much with the microtransit and what's happening. But back during COVID, I recall when I was on the board that we said, okay, we're not going to look at fares now. We haven't changed them for a while, but we're going to do a study and we're going to get, some changes made, because there's, one of two things, and we all know we're never going to make this, we're not trying to ever make it a balanced. It's not going to happen. It would be cost prohibitive if we did try to make it balanced, but we did say that more of the money has to come from fares, and every time since then that I've not been on the board, you come back up and said, and we're looking at starting a fare rate study, and I'm just, when are we really going to do that? I mean, unfortunately, when did you say it? How long has it been since we've looked at the rates and changed them?
It's been several years, and the last time we did it was 2016, 2017, and the board chose not to implement an increase.
I understand. So the point is that I think that is for yourself, and we are still part of Lynx, that is something that really needs to be looked at.
And if I may, Commissioner, at our June board meeting, an award of the contract for a fare analysis will be presented for approval.
Good, then we're right on time, huh?
Commissioner Delory, do you have anything?
I have a couple quick questions, if I may. Thank you for presenting to us today. You just finished talking about potentially doing a fare analysis. If you do get the permission to move forward, when would you be expecting to get that analysis back?
I believe, James, and I don't want to speak, it's about a 6-month study.
So once it's approved, 6 to 7 months, we should see the results.
Correct.
We should be able to see.
Everybody will.
Okay, just wanted to make sure.
Yeah.
On one of your slides, which is the 2026 Partner Operation Funds, where it says Sunrail Feeders contribution, there's an asterisk. What does that asterisk mean?
That is to point out that it's comparing a 12-month expense to a 9-month expense that we're annualizing. It's the note that I tried to make when we presented that slide.
That's what that means, because I don't
Yes.
see that anywhere in the presentation.
Yeah, and I probably, it was originally a footnote. I'm sure it probably got cut off.
Okay, so that's basically normalizing this from...
Right. In fiscal '25, FDOT paid for the first quarter, October, November, December. Funding partners paid January forward. And in fiscal '26, funding partners will be paying the entire 12 months. So we wanted to point out that it's not a year to a year, but it's 12 months to 9 months.
I get that. I didn't know what the asterisk meant.
Yeah.
Okay. Then on, when it says Seminole County budget requested, when it's got the different scenarios, I'm assuming that looking at the number 16, I'm rounding up to the nearest million, 16 million, 11 million, 9 million, and 14 million. When you go to the 9 million, that's when we go to full microtransit, is that correct?
Well, that's based on the fiscal '26 preliminary budget if changes were to happen October 1st. Yes. That would be a full 12-month impact.
Correct, but that's when we actually make the changes that we've all been talking about, correct?
Yes.
I just want to make sure that's what we're, and then, so for the capital contribution of $123,000, what does that capital go towards?
That's the matching on state and federal grants. A lot of the grants are 80-20, 90-10 grants, and we need to have a local match.
So would that money be spent in Seminole?
It's spent on, as part of the regional model, it could be for vehicles, it could be anything, and those vehicles could be anywhere within the system.
So it could be anywhere in the system, but it won't be spent particularly or earmarked for Seminole. It's just system as a whole.
No, 'cause we purchase vehicles, the vehicles aren't assigned to a route, they pull out in the order in which they're parked. So not every vehicle goes to the same route every day.
Okay, so would that be normalized as a percentage of how many vehicles each county has?
The model that was agreed upon by the board was that it would be $3 per service hour provided. That's why the number of dollars go down depending upon the amount of service hours that are being provided. So in the full base case, it's
So it is based on
376.
service hours in a
Yes.
particular county?
Yes.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Anything else?
That's it.
Commissioner Herr?
I think there's great interest in the fare study, and you've heard that loud and clear. I think there's also great interest in actually changing the fares once the study has been done, and I think you heard that at that end, but I don't want to speak for you all, but that didn't get said in the middle here. But we certainly have talked about it, I think, from the time Commissioner Constantine was on your board, the time I was on your board, and certainly under Commissioner Lockhart. We realize that we are a minority voice on that board, and that is a struggle. And I do think that making sure that you carry our voice back is really, really important, and I know you do that, but I can't say that enough. We want to be a regional partner, and we want to be treated like a regional partner, and I think that's been a struggle. And I say that to you and to our regional partners who may be listening. I would also, just with regard to the benefits, just because I can't not go there, did you do an RFP? I just don't remember.
We have not.
So how did Gehring do a study?
Gehring is our broker,
I do know who they are.
and we asked them to do, it was basically request for information.
So there are a lot of carriers out there. There are a lot of third-party administrators out there now that are viable competitors to BUCA, Blue Cross United, Cigna, and Aetna. Aetna wasn't mentioned, and Aetna actually is a player in this market now, and they weren't before. I won't lean in any direction toward any vendor, but if they have not actually looked at it on a broader base, I do think there's opportunity there without negatively impacting your benefits. But I do think that one of the challenges that we all have in government is that we don't like to change benefits because we work here for the benefits. At the same time, salaries have been increasing, and every year we're hearing salaries are increasing, and that's the driver of budgets. And we've been increasing them, quite frankly, higher than the private sector. We're increasing ours higher than the private sector at this point. And so I do think there's a look to benefit plans that needs to take place. I would also tell you there's opportunities for carving out pharmacy that will save money, hands down. And if no one's looked at your pharmacy contract, they need to be doing that, and I suspect they have not. Just my market knowledge. So there's money sitting there, and it's minimum 6 digits, more than likely 7, without benefit changes. That's my input. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. I think everything's been covered that I may go into, and, you know, since I've arrived here, I've been pretty vocal what I thought about the business model at Lynx, and I won't go into it again, but hopefully you all are embracing the technology as well as what is going to occur and force changes, quite frankly, in your organization as things move forward. This microtransit Seminole County is doing is just one step of where ultimately this transportation model is headed. And hopefully you're preparing your workforce and your business model and looking at that before it's forced upon you all, which would not be a benefit to the region. So hopefully you're looking at all those dynamics and things that are moving through technology to allow a better model, business model to come forward. But with that said, we sincerely appreciate you all being here today and sincerely appreciate you willing to work with us and as we find our new wings in our microtransit realm, and we appreciate and will continue to work with Lynx as need be. So thank you very much.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, I'd like to ask Darren Gray a question or two.
Sure. Yes, sir. Greg?
Thank you, Darren. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Darren, as they were stating here that the capital contribution is based on service hours, and I know we're reducing our service hours for the county, so I just want to make sure that your staff is tracking that correctly.
Yes.
Which I'm sure they will.
Yes.
And then also understand, they said that they had paratransit customers to see how do we, if there is an opportunity to use some of those customers to go into microtransit.
Right.
I want to make sure that that's going on as well.
Absolutely.
Because it'd be great if we can reduce those two numbers.
Absolutely, I agree.
So just wanted to make sure we're on the record for that.
Yes, thank you.
Good.
All right, anything else?
That's it.
Seeing none, thank you all very much. We sincerely appreciate you being here. And hopefully, we didn't freeze you too bad this morning. Next up is going to be J.R. Kroll, the Seminole County Tax Collector. Mr. Kroll, happy belated birthday.
All right, good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Ready to go? Okay. Good morning. So I wanted to go over a little bit. Oh, that one. Okay, let's hope it works, right? So this morning I want to go over a little bit first, explaining about my office and how it works a little bit before I go into my budget detail. Our office is basically, we have two big parts of the office. First of all, obviously, is a tax collection. That's where we are, collecting all the taxes, the property taxes for the county, and then redistributing those funds. The big part of what we do every day is really the DMV that we run for the state. I mean, for the state, but not statewide. Because those fees are mandated by the state and they do not cover for what they pay us on it, it's pretty much a loss leader on that. We lose money on that. So it is subsidized by the taxes of Seminole County is where some of that money comes in, because we just don't make enough on the transactions. And let's say we get $6.25 and it takes an hour, well, we're paying $16, $17 an hour to an employee. Well, quick math says we're losing money, But that's part of just what we work with every day, and that's, we do also do the concealed weapon permits, and we do the agricultural for the hunting and fishing licenses. Those are smaller parts of what we do, but the big part of what we do is that DMV side. So that being said, our budget has to come and cover these expenses. I'll go through a bunch of things today. We have our introduction and then the taxable values, and I'll go through a number of these right now on what we have. So here in Florida, the tax collector budget is determined through a multi-step process that emphasizes us as a fee office, meaning that we actually generate revenue. And that is through the DMV side, even though that's a loss, and then collection of the taxes. We collect some. That's how we subsidize the tax on the cost of the DMV. And our operations are funded, I'll get to the next screen here. So our operations are funded by fees and commissions earned on those services rendered. And those fees are outlined in the Florida statutes and established by the Florida legislature. So we don't get to determine anything. We have very little determination of anything for the DMV side. To give an example, we have 122 employees right now, I believe, total. And I think 60 or 70 are basically in the DMV side, and we have another 10 to 15 that we do through the tax department. So if we only did taxes, we could run a lot more efficiently, obviously, because having 6 offices and that many employees all run through the DMV side. So we're required by Florida statute to submit our annual budget to the Florida Department of Revenue, and the budget is due by August 1st of every year. So we are a little early, and that's why we never do ours the same as the rest of the constitutional officers and everyone else. So the Department of Revenue is who determines and reviews our budget to ensure that it's adequate to run our tax collector operations. If the department finds that our budget is not adequate or it's excessive, they'll return it to us with their ruling and tell us we have to adjust it. Once it's finally approved by the department, the budget can't be reduced or increased without their approval. So our tax collector office collects the fees in excess of the budget. Then this is excess revenue, and it's not kept by our office, but instead we turn it over to the Board of County Commissioners and, you know, the assortment of the cities and all that, get all evenly spread for that. So when we go through our taxable values and how much it's been increasing, you can see by that chart that it's definitely going up every year, the taxable value amount. So we had from 2020, when I first got elected, we were at 37 billion, and then now 2021, 39, 44, 49, 53 billion. So it just keeps, the amount keeps going up because property values increase, which everybody's happy about. Now, when we look at our revenue versus our expenses, that's where I try to keep things the same. So our actual revenue totals have gone up, but then we had COVID in there, so it gets a little wonky for a little while. But in 2019, we had like 14 billion, then 13 billion with the COVID and all. 13 billion, then it started increasing again to 14 billion, and last year was 16 billion. So we're looking at our expense totals. Our actual expenses have been lower. We had a tax program that we had to implement, which was very costly for us, but we got through that already. And we also, when I first got elected, we built the Altamont Springs branch, which was costly. So these are some major expenses when I first got in, but I haven't had anything since then.
Mr. Kroll, just want to make sure the numbers you were quoting were in billions. They're actually millions, correct?
Yes.
Just want to make sure.
Sorry, yes, there is a dot there.
Great.
I'm looking at the wrong numbers here. So I should wear my
Thank you.
glasses. Okay, so now our approved budget goes through each year, where we're typically at 13.5 million is our typical budget. We started that in 2019, and we were a little bit lower in 2020. Then we got very low for 2021. Our budget was a lot lower. And same thing with 2022, and then we went up again for 2023, 24, because that's when we were transitioning from that tax program. So we've been trying to always keep our expenses low is what we try to do. And our biggest, like I said, our biggest expense is the employees of the DMV, which are our employees, but we work as an agent. So with each one of those, it shows how much we're under budget every year when you look at our actual expenses and our approved budget. And, you know, typically we're 1.5 to 2 million, sometimes even 3 million under budget. So, because if we planned for something we couldn't get accomplished, then we're under budget. So our average under budget since I've been elected has been over $2 million that we're under budget every year. And then now come to our excess revenue. So where we have our average excess revenue, which is, because our budget's not completed yet this year, so we'll know it by August, and of course we submit everything in there. But we've had excess budget as high as, 4 million, 4.4 million one year, and as low as 3 million. But when you average that, we're at like 3.3 million average excess fees that we have that we end up returning to the county every year. So in our, let's see where I'm at here. I think I got lost a little bit. Oh, that's it. So yeah, our average budget request, if I can read that now. The average budget request is about 13 million is what we come in with. And pretty much that's what I have for my presentation. It's short and sweet, but if I had questions from the board about it, we can go through that.
Sure. We'll go to the board. Commissioner Herr, we'll start at your end.
I have no questions.
Commissioner Glory.
No comments, just thank you very much, JR.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Constein.
Jim, what's the increase percentage-wise from last year for this budget?
From
The total revenue increase? In the general fund?
Yes.
3%.
Thank you. I mean, for this office,
Oh,
this request.
excuse me, the tax collector's increase is based on a formula, which is aligned with property taxes, so that his increase would be 6.75% from what we would be giving to him.
Thank you.
Commissioner Lockhart.
On topic, but off topic, in light of recent issues with driver's licenses and real IDs being given out, where are we in Seminole County with ensuring that we're following state law?
in regards to the real ID,
In regards to making sure that we're compliant with state law and not giving illegal immigrants driver's licenses?
Well, I mean, that's part of the Real ID process, is why we started. We're at 99% at this point of Seminole County has gotten their Real IDs compliant. Really what we're doing is making sure that that person is who they say they are. And obviously, if you don't have the right documentation when you come in to get a driver's license, you can still not be a U.S. citizen and get a driver's license, but
Right.
you're going to have the documentation. If you come in without it, we do have people who try to forge it. I mean, that's an everyday thing. We work with the department every day about that. You know, someone once off comes in and tries to, forge some paperwork or a fake, birth certificate or something, and, we usually catch it. Our
Right.
people are pretty good about that.
Okay, that's great. I know the Attorney General, recently announced there have been some arrests around the state, and I just thought it would be important for us to know where we stand in Seminole County with our processes.
Well, yeah, we're not Miami-Dade, because they are, all these problems that usually come up, we always hear, it's Miami-Dade. That's where all these issues are really happening. We've got pretty good hold on it. We're just a small community, so we can really manage this a lot easier than something like Miami-Dade, especially that they just transitioned to a tax collector. So they've got a whole nightmare of other things happening in that office right now.
Okay, all right, thank you so much.
Okay.
Hey,
Mr.
Commissioner
Chairman.
Constantine, you have something additional?
Well, no, I just wanted to say, I asked the question of Tim, but at the same time, I think, speaking for myself, but I've heard this from many other people on this dais and other places, that we thank you for the consistency of your job that you have done for Seminole County.
Well, thank you.
Anything else? Commissioner Hurd?
One more.
I just want to point out for the record, if you go back one slide, because I did it, that math doesn't add up to the percentage that you said, because that is this year's budget. Your current budget, the new budget, is not in this slide. So I did the math year over year. That was last year's.
Yeah,
So
'cause we
for
don't have a
anybody
budget
out
yet.
there that was like, wait a minute, that's not the number, that's the reason. Because your budget isn't done yet, because it's due in August. And I heard you say that 4 times, but I still did the math.
Okay, yeah, no, we will have it to you as you do
I
every year.
get it.
It's just August 1st.
Anything else?
We're good.
I just want to thank you on behalf of the citizens of the county and what you return to the county taxpayers, average yearly, and hopefully that continues to occur and continues to rise accordingly to help offset their burden. So I sincerely thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
We will now move to Sheriff Dennis Lima and his team. Welcome, Sheriff.
Good morning. So I'll be joined this morning with Chief Lisa Spriggs over our Administrative Services, and then our Financial Director, Mary Hope, as well. So Chairman, Commissioners, County Manager, and staff, thank you so much for the opportunity to speak with you this morning. Let me begin by expressing my sincere gratitude for your ongoing leadership and your continued commitment to fiscal responsibility. Each of you have consistently demonstrated a thoughtful, disciplined approach to balancing the essential needs of this community while also being mindful stewards of taxpayer dollars. And as a fiscal conservative, I share your values and appreciate the challenges that you face in maintaining that balance. The meetings and conversations that we've had with each of you over the past couple of weeks have been incredibly productive and meaningful, particularly in a year where my budget request comes with a significant increase. Each of you have approached these conversations after reviewing what we initially submitted, and in many cases asked for additional documentation and follow-up. Our residents deserve to know that our ongoing partnership and shared commitment to transparency have resulted in us providing a more detailed information list than ever in our history. And I want to commend each of you for your interest in this process. I'm submitting our Sheriff's Office proposed budget for our fiscal year 2025 to 2026, which reflects a 9% increase year over year. As we've discussed, I fully recognize that our agency represents more than half of the overall general fund budget. However, as you know, approximately 40%, or $80 million of that, supports correctional facility operations, county probation, our school safety partnership, our juvenile detention center, and then, of course, juvenile court programs. We commonly refer to this as BCC vested services. These arrangements have entrusted the Sheriff's Office with addressing crime, safety, and recidivism through corrective behavior programs and reentry programs, as it aligns with my constitutional responsibilities as sheriff. This proposed increase is driven by the compensation market and not a reflection of excess but necessity. For the first time in my tenure as sheriff, this request exceeds the annual growth of property tax revenues. This increase is personnel-focused, which you know takes over 85% of our overall operating budget. Even when we're experiencing increases in material costs, we present no increases to capital or operational outlays. Across the state of Florida, support for public safety professionals has gone beyond rhetoric. Our state leaders have taken bold action to attract qualified candidates. The legislature and Governor Ron DeSantis have introduced numerous incentive programs to recruit law enforcement officers from across the country. Municipalities and counties have followed suit, creating highly competitive compensation packages. And as a result, within the past 12 months alone, the starting salary of a deputy sheriff in Seminole County has fallen to one of the lowest amongst local Seminole County law enforcement agencies, currently $8,500 behind the highest paid in Seminole. Regionally, neighborhood agencies offer higher starting salaries than Seminole as well. In recent years, I focus on comparisons to our peer agencies within Seminole County. However, I think a fair comparison should also be made against other sheriff's offices with similar population sizes, responsibilities, and socioeconomic characteristics of those communities from across the state. These are important comparisons to make, and agencies from across the state are also finding themselves in similar situations. I remain incredibly grateful that this board has worked closely with us over the years to remain competitive. But the market has changed again. Agencies are now offering significant signing bonuses along with adjusted base salary for experience. The reality that we face right now is deputies are financially incentivized and recruited to change agencies every few years, collecting signing bonuses and maintaining their seniority pay. And this has created a cycle of attrition and competition that we have seen in other professions, but this is relatively new to the policing field. The workforce is also evolving. Fewer recruits seek long-term careers in policing. Many possess undergraduate and graduate degrees, military service, or private sector experience, and they serve proudly for the time that they're here, but they transition within a few years because the skills learned on the job are often incredibly lucrative in the private sector. That is the new reality that we work and live in, and our job is to adapt and make the most of their service during the times that they're here. It costs between $144,000 and $214,000 to onboard and properly train a deputy. Employee attrition is a significant loss of taxpayer-funded investment. Our 9% increase includes 6% for fair and competitive compensation and 1.5% for overtime, which is heavily used during the onboarding and corrections backfill, which remains one of the most challenging areas to staff. And although we've seen recruitment success with our academy, our team remains committed and professional, even though recruitment and retention have proven difficult. We expect these costs to normalize as more recruits complete training and graduate, nearly the 40 cadets that will be graduating from our academy and being sworn in later this afternoon. Another 1% goes towards increasing contributions to the Florida retirement system, and then less than 1% towards health care costs. We aim to ensure for fair and competitive compensation for the men and women serving our community. And our team has reviewed our agency structure and daily operation to identify potential reductions that would not negatively impact public safety. Earlier this year, we strategically consolidated 2 of our divisions to increase efficiency without compromising services, while at the same time, we were able to eliminate 1 senior-level captain position within our ranks. We've converted sworn positions into civilian investigators in areas such as in our major crimes and our digital forensics, knowing that a civilian total compensation package is lower than a sworn position. We will continue to look to civilianize positions whenever we can, as long as it doesn't jeopardize overall safety and operations. We've used volunteers. Last year alone, over 40,000 hours were given back in 2024, equating to 20 full-time equivalent positions. We continue to utilize non-traditional resources as well, grants and partnerships to support our agency. And as we move forward, we will continue to examine every possible cost-saving strategy that we can. And I want to reaffirm that I am fully prepared, as I typically do, to walk through each division and explain the critical functions of our office as in years past and as outlined in this current presentation today. Our community engagement and crime prevention sections remain integral to our crime-fighting success, as do our organization's investment in prevention programs, particularly surrounding our youth. Seminole County remains one of the safest counties because of our proactive efforts to regularly develop relationships and connect with law-abiding residents, deter victimization, and reduce the fear of crime. In part, this is why we've experienced a 20.3% decrease in our unincorporated crime rate just last year alone, and approximately a 53% decrease over the past 8 years. Long before state or federal mandates existed, and in direct partnership with Seminole County Public Schools, together we chose to assign a professionally trained deputy sheriff or police officer to every single public school campus rather than solely utilize the Guardian program. These deputies not only ensure for safety on our campus, but investigate crimes, build trust with our youth, and serve as mentors and positive role models. We also recognize that there is a high level of uncertainty right now at both the state and federal level when it comes to funding, particularly in grants and reimbursement programs. The Seminole County Sheriff's Office has always stood ready with our partners at the Seminole County Fire Department, Seminole County Emergency Management, and other public safety entities to prepare for and respond to emergency situations. That does not change. Additionally, we know that some programs that previously have provided funding and support and grants may no longer be available, or at a bare minimum, significantly reduced, particularly with drug trafficking operations and HIDA's reduction. Together, we plan and prepare for what lies around the corner. And as mentioned, we've implemented division consolidation, civilianization, overtime controls, and position elimination. But market pressure have outpaced our efforts. This budget is about preserving what we've built. It's about ensuring that Seminole County remains a destination for top-tier public safety professionals, and that the services expected of Seminole County residents are never compromised. The risks of inaction are clear. Without adequate resources, we run the risk of losing capable, well-trained personnel. And as a result, morale can suffer, over time costs will skyrocket, and community safety could be jeopardized. I understand the difficult decisions lie ahead, and we've had very candid and honest conversations about the options that are on the table right now. However, it is my responsibility as sheriff to respond to the unique market dynamics affecting law enforcement. The market for sworn personnel has changed dramatically in recent years. While it's easy to make surface-level comparisons across roles in government, the reality is that law enforcement recruitment and retention challenges are being driven by market forces well outside of our control here. Adjustments must be made in accordance with fair market value, and our current challenge is to ensure that the men and women serving on the front lines of public safety are not left behind in that process. And I am confident that the citizens of Seminole County will continue to support the men and women of law enforcement who raise their hand, take an oath to protect our domestic freedoms. They keep our community safe and continue to allow us to preserve the quality of life we're accustomed to. And I know this board has strongly supported these heroes, and you are proud of the work that they do. I will submit that this is an investment in our safety, stability, and long-term fiscal health, as the cost of not keeping up is more significant in the long term than to keep pace. So in accordance with the requirements set forth in Florida State Statute, Chapter 30.49, and fulfillment of my constitutional responsibilities, I respectfully submit the Seminole County Sheriff's Office's proposed budget for fiscal year 2025 to 2026. The total proposed certified budget is $196,015,000, representing a 9% increase over the current fiscal year. The budget is reasonable and necessary for appropriate and efficient running of the Seminole County Sheriff's Office. This increase is attributable to essential investments in personnel, our single greatest asset in response to sustained labor market challenges affecting law enforcement agencies across Florida and the nation. I want to thank you all for your partnership, your stewardship, and your commitment to the citizens of Seminole County time and time again. At this time, we can answer any questions or proceed along with our presentation that outlines the Sheriff's Office budget in greater detail, and then breaks down division, section to section of how this money is being spent.
What's the pleasure of the board? Sheriff, why don't you go ahead and proceed working through your budget?
First slide is our organizational breakdown. This is how the chiefs and the departments are aligned and set. One interesting thing to point out, and I typically say this each and every year, is we are incredibly unique when it comes to more than 50% of our executive team are actually civilian members and not sworn law enforcement members. There's two benefits to that. A civilian member who is in an executive position within our team is less expensive than a high-risk level sworn person within the agency, so we try to civilianize as much as we can. You see the breakdown section from the chiefs that are there in yellow and the areas of responsibility that fall under them. Again, this budget, since the last time we appeared before you, has been reduced by one captain position, and 2 divisions were consolidated into one. That was the Special Operations Division that has SWAT, aviation, K-9, bomb teams, all of the high-speed stuff. We aligned that with our Domestic Security Division for greater efficiency and cost savings.
This slide shows our complete budget. When the sheriff certifies his budget, that is the net amount that we're requesting draw from your county general fund. This slide actually shows our total budget. It shows the $204 million budget for general fund includes contractual revenue that we'll show the detail here in a minute. That includes our partnership with Seminole County Public Schools for our SRD program and our partnership with our municipalities for our dispatching services countywide. The second column reflects our special revenue funds, and we'll show a detail and talk briefly about those in a minute. And then the third column requests BCC facilities, which is a partnership between county facilities and Seminole County Sheriff's personnel facilities to mainly facilitate different repairs and maintenance within our correctional facility.
This is the breakdown of total positions. The unique thing here is you can see we're just shy of 1,400 total members when you combine the full and part-time. Part-time are a variety of positions, but a good majority of those part-time positions are our school crossing guard program that are out there. The interesting fact here is by far, as you can see, the largest component of our organization is still civilian members of the agency. And sometimes when people think about a sheriff's office or a policing function, they don't realize that the largest component are actually civilians. When you look at the various positions that we have, our attempt to do what we can to civilianize. And of course, a big portion of that is consolidated dispatch that we have on the third floor of our operations building.
This slide depicts the statutory requirement that the sheriff is required to certify his budget. It's set up by the statutory requirement of law enforcement, correctional activities, and then court security. On this slide, you can see the breakdown of our certified budget, what we're requesting from the county general fund as our draw. And this compares last fiscal year 25, or the current fiscal year that we're in, to our requested ask this year. And as you can see, all of the additional funding is going into the personal services line. And we'll get into the detail, and I'll explain the reduction in operating expenditures in the next few slides.
And in my opening remarks, I had mentioned that the breakdown, the 60-40 breakdown, 40% of the services that we provide are what we call BCC vested services. For the entire 112-year existence of Seminole County, those services, largely of correctional facility, have been delegated to the sheriff as it aligns with the constitutional responsibilities of running a correctional facility, because citizens expect that if we apprehend somebody for breaking the law and we incarcerate them, that we do whatever we can to do to fix whatever's broken. And the continuum of work on the inside to the work on the outside just works incredibly well. Something that we're grateful for, the other functions that are there. But we put this slide in just to make sure that the public is aware that, again, $80 million of the operating budget that we have are really services that the board delegates to us to take care of on their behalf. And again, we just list this there. We still recognize that more than half of the general fund budget is the sheriff's office, but this breakdown of 40% is a big portion of it as well.
This reconciliation shows how we get from our general fund expenditures and reducing out our revenues that we collect directly through contracts and agreement. Again, the majority of those are with Seminole County Public Schools and our municipalities for SRD and dispatching services, and down to our net general fund expenditures. This is a breakdown in detail of our revenues. At the bottom, you'll see the contractual revenues that we just showed net. The ones at the top, the $4,335,000, are all revenues that are collected from operational activities within the sheriff's office, but they go direct into the county's general fund budget. They are not netted against ours. The largest of those is our federal inmate contract, where we house federal inmates within the facility. Currently, we're looking at reviewing the rate for this contract so that when we get to our public hearing, we may be able to adjust that number up slightly, but we're going through that process starting in the next couple of weeks.
As was mentioned in my comments, and actually mentioned even before our presentation, is our organization, again, is mostly personnel. And this slide is incredibly important, particularly when you're asking for a significant increase as we are this year. It is all people. And unless you're going to carve out and cut services that are direct service to people, it makes it incredibly difficult, considering an operating budget that is 85% of that people. Of course, some of the capital and the other components that we have, it takes equipment and things in order for us to do our job. Bad guys look at technology. We have to make sure that we're keeping pace with that. We need vehicles and equipment, not only for routine patrol, but in the event of an emergency, natural disaster, the flooding, and all of those things. So again, that is a small percentage of that. I don't have to tell the citizens or the board that inflation has affected all of us in what we do. The cost of everything has gone up over the years, but we remain flat in operating in capital only because we've been able to move resources. We operate a vacancy rate in detention deputy and deputy sheriff anywhere from 15 to 20%. Although we've backfilled those with use of overtime positions, those overtime positions are usually to meet minimum staffing requirements. So if you have FTEs that are not being filled, it has allowed us to move some money around in order to remain flat within those areas. And again, the people that represent that 85%, I will break down towards the end of this presentation of who they are and particularly what they do. Last interesting note on here is as our population has grown significantly, there's been very little growth in our neighborhood policing concepts. Like the same amount of community service areas or patrol functions have remained the same for the past 20 years. And we just make do with the partnerships we have with the municipalities and taking on more responsibilities.
And Commissioners, I'm going to back up on this slide 1 minute and point something else out that is worth noting today. The inmate telephone commissions you'll see is at 0. That was a federal enacted mandate where we can no longer collect commissions on the correctional phone system for inmates. That was enacted a couple months ago, and so next year we will collect no revenues there, where in prior years we've collected a little over $500,000. This slide starts into our detailed line item budget. We also provided the commission with a supplemental package that even breaks these line items down a little bit further so you could see the detail within them. I'm just going to highlight a couple of things here. On the salaries and wages line, you'll see in a minute in operating when we get there that we have reclassed contractual expenditures for nursing services that we use contracted nursing. We are going to try this year to hire full-time nurses with the market the way it was in the last 5 to 7 years. It had been extremely hard to attract FTE that were full-time. It's much more efficient to have nursing on staff and not have the changeover that you do have with contractual nurses. So this does include about $1.2 million in the salaries and wages that has been reclassed from operating expenditures. As the sheriff mentioned earlier, overtime has been a challenge. Part of that is related to the onboarding of vacancies. Even if we have a hired deputy recruit, we're paying for that deputy recruit while they go through that training, and we provided in the supplemental information the hours and the time that it takes and also the cost. And then in some cases, we're backfilling that same position at the same time. So that has been, over the years, very challenging to be able to cover that overtime. So we're hoping again in future years, as we begin to get those vacancies down, that we can mitigate the overtime in future budgets. Retirement contributions is another noteworthy line to point out. High-risk retirement specifically has been raised 10.7% over the last 5 years. That's a contribution rate, not a percentage increase, which means that 10.7% of all wages are going into the pension system. This year, the impact of the state's increase in contribution has impacted us an additional $1.7 million just within that line item. Getting into our operating budget, I just spoke about the professional services line. That's where our contracted nursing services are. That reclass of $1,260,000 is then reflected, so it's budget neutral, up within the salaries and wages to support those FTE that we would like to start to try to hire over this next year. Contractual services has a minor adjustment, mainly here within, and we've provided that detail within this line. We've had some reductions, but the increases are generally in the area of inmate food and GPS monitoring services. Operating supplies, we've been able to reduce in various areas, but mainly the price of fuel is coming down. For us, fuel is a large spend item. So as that comes down, we also benefit from the ability to reduce our operating. In insurance, we've kept that relatively flat. We are looking at some different ways that we can provide for our insurance and maybe do some of the services within our repair area in-house, so that has remained flat. Overall, operating expenditures are reduced by the $1,260,000, but as we said, we've really kept it flat. That was a reclass up into the personnel area. For capital outlay, $4.5 million. $2.5 million of that is for our replacement and renewal of our fleet. About $1.5 million of that is related to technology and networking. And about $500,000 of that is related to other specialty equipment. Just want to point out, if you go back into a previous budget, and we've also supplied this in our line item detail, we did reclass a little over $2 million of that into the operating supply line. That's why the operating supply line is so large. A lot of what we do now is system-oriented, and the purchase of those type of systems, like for our body-worn cameras, our in-car cameras, our taser system, our entire digital evidence system, is considered subscription-based. So from an accounting and recording standpoint, it is an operating supply. The good thing about that is over the last 5 years, we've been able to transition a lot of our contracts to this basis, which for us means we are now locked in for a period of time to a flat contract rate, so they won't increase. And part of those agreements, we actually just have the equipment portion of those systems replaced. So if something happens, if they break, we swap them out, and that's part of the contractual agreement. There's no more cost in that repair. Our reserve for contingency, I want to point out, we raised it a couple years ago. We tried to raise it so that we had enough money there to at least support relatively one storm. We talked about FEMA reimbursement. That's been somewhat of a challenge. So sometimes for us, when it occurs at year end, we have to cash flow it. We continue to hold that reserve for contingency of $350,000. Is there any questions on general fund before I move forward?
Commissioner Lockhart?
So I spent a lot of time and I asked for a lot of information, and I appreciate so much you giving it, because in years prior, I think it's kind of been like, well, what does she want that for? You know, like, wah. But this is a very different year. It is. And I feel like all of us do that this year may be a little bit more invasive than prior years. Because of the overall situation that we're finding ourselves in. So I just picked a line item, just the office supplies and operating supplies. And I want you to walk me through, one of the reasons I asked for budget versus actual spreadsheets, which you provided and I think were shared with the entire board. And so that, I mean, down to the, like, it's like you 7-point font, you can barely read it. Level of detail is what we've gone into here. And I think I've worked with Lisa for many years, and it's, I think I might be off the Christmas card list this year. But, so when we look at, I'm comparing the '04 budget actual to the 05, which I know we haven't done we're not through the entire 05. So I'm looking at the office supply line. And in 04, we had $78,000 as a part of the adopted budget. And then we made a budget adjustment of an additional $50,000 at some point. The actuals were 113. Are you, it's the very first sheet of the spreadsheet that we had talked about. Are you following me? Do you have it?
I'm following you.
Okay.
I do not have it in front of me.
Okay.
Unfortunately, I have my computer closed. And Commissioner DeValerie will appreciate this because he knows I love my computer, because it froze up.
Oh,
so
no.
I don't have the detail, but
Okay.
we would
Well,
be happy to
Is that
look
due to
at.
budget cuts again?
I'm probably not going to be able to answer that question off the top of our
So-
head, but we can look at the detail.
I want to look at, just as an
Yeah.
example, because it's a low number line item, it's not sexy, right? It's office supplies and operating supplies, so we're not talking about anything that's, privileged law enforcement, information. But I'm seeing some numbers that are changing. The operating supply of 04 was 6.4 million budgeted. In 04, this, for 25, it's 7.2, but you've got up there that it was 9.5. So at some point, I think,
Okay, so that is the reclass. The operating supplies, when we went from, if you look at our capital, there was about 2.25 million reclassed. And if you go to not that supplemental information, the big report, but the smaller packet, we did give you a line item breakdown, and you'll see specifically that reclass. And that is
Okay.
related to all of those agreements that I was talking about, mainly like body-worn cameras, in-car cameras, it's our
Okay.
digital evidence system, it's our tasers. There's some other technology included. They're considered subscription-based.
okay.
And that's been something that over the last few years in the accounting world, they've actually tackled and said, no, they're truly operating, because we don't own the equipment.
Got it.
It's under a subscription.
Okay. I just, when you look at numbers and we're comparing year over year, that's how I get a sense of where the need for our budget, where, we didn't spend everything that we budgeted. Did it carry forward? What do we see happening in the next year that we're going to need more? And so I kind of did that with a lot of these different line items, particularly the.
Yeah. And
Some of them,
and
so
the
that
top
explains
sheet that you're talking about, that's Mary's creation, but that is a reconciliation to get to our audited numbers. So sometimes with the contracts and agreements, we're also putting budget in the general fund budget. Going all the way back, it's worth, since you're asking the question, going all the way back to here, where you have the general fund revenues, that 8.4 million uncontractual, and the reason Mary does this reconciliation here is that we have to include that within our total budget. And when we get audited and we're submitting the audit to you, that's part of our general fund, even though it's not coming from Seminole County general fund taxpayers. It might be coming from the municipalities, it might be coming from the school board and our partnerships. So those are contractual revenues that adjust our general fund budget, if that makes sense.
It does. It does.
Yeah, so that's what that reconciliation you have
All right.
shows. And Commissioner, I do appreciate the fact that you took the time to go in and look. It is not that we are a transparent book. We did not want to overload anyone with hundreds of pages of detail. We do account for our operations, and we'll talk about the divisions in a minute, down to cost centers, just like the county does. So our divisions are broken down into many, many areas, and we account for those. And then we also have a lot of special revenue sources that we can go into here that also require us to account for those separately. So it ends up being a lot of numbers and a lot of detail, so we don't like to overload you with that either.
Yeah, I appreciate the offer to not overload, but this year we're in overload.
Yeah.
So thank you, I appreciate it.
You're welcome. Any other questions before we move on?
Anything else from the board?
I just have one question.
Okay, I'm going to hold mine until the presentation's complete.
And I will do that, but just in brief, you have one slide that says proposed budget breakdown by services. I know you were talking about it's 40%, 40.5% BCC vested services. The jail was specifically mentioned, but there's other vested services that you contract, or we contract with you. Is all that in that number?
Yes, it is.
Can
So
you-
there's.
Not today, but can you give me a list of what those are?
Absolutely.
Because I know this
In
jail
fact,
is-
we have. So there was a separate packet that Tim distributed with supplemental. It does have the breakdown of all of those services
Because I
within
know
it.
there's a jail, there's dispatch.
There's juvenile court programs
Exactly.
within there. There's
Juvenile detention center.
the school resource
probation.
deputy portion that the
So
that the county
that's the
general
total
fund.
number, correct?
Total number.
I just want to make
Yes,
sure, because
that's
we
a
only
total.
mentioned the
Everything.
jail so far.
Right.
Yeah.
So the difference would be you have a 79.4 million. If you go back to, wait a minute, maybe it was forward. Sorry, certification, you can see corrections. So the correctional there includes both the juvenile detention center and Johnny Polk.
Okay. I just didn't, because then there's a slide further in your presentation that talks about dispatch, but it wasn't identified during that slide that dispatch and other services are in that number. That's all.
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner?
follow up on that same slide, that same follow-up supplemental piece of the packet. The BCC vested services, one of those listed was code enforcement, which is moving back to the BCC, and that line item, when this was given to us, was left blank, and you have a number now you said that we can plug in there?
So our budget for code enforcement was right at $500,000. That included 6 FTE, and we did account for them separate, even though they were part of Seminole Neighborhood Policing in the past. We have zeroed that out of our budget.
Okay, and that 600, you said 600,000? 500,000?
500,000.
Six fully loaded positions. What other than salaries was in that 500,000?
Very minor operating. We can provide you the detail. I think we
I'd like
have
that.
provided that to
Oh,
your staff.
do we
Yeah.
have that? I don't have that, but, okay.
Yeah.
We can provide that in the cost center details. There's a separate cost center for code enforcement, but I'll be happy to send that in.
Would it be in one of these spreadsheets? I will look for it. I will-
It'd be in the detail that was behind, that was the top level and all those other, tabs of that spreadsheet, but we'll send you the code enforcement cost center.
Okay, great. Thank you so much.
And in that transition, we also have some vehicles that we agreed to transition over to the BCC. They're relatively late model, so.
Sorry, I'm just perplexed. So there was no fuel attributed for those cars driving around in that 500,000?
That is charged to the fuel, to the fleet cost center.
So we don't allocate out our central services unless
Okay.
it's a direct. We do it a little bit for corrections so that we can
Okay.
account for the different, but we do not do cost allocation. So when you see our fleet division in the back, you're going to see an all-in with fuel.
Okay.
So we do account for it a cost from law enforcement, corrections, and courts, just like we have it broken down on the certified budget.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. They answered my question. I just want to make sure that all those items were in that breakdown. That's all.
Well, it's my recollection, I know I requested it, and I think it was provided by the county manager's office, a full breakdown of the costs that were being transferred to the BCC on code enforcement, including the vehicles. That's what I recall seeing, separate of this budget discussion, were presented to us.
Right.
Okay, just want to make sure. Okay. All righty. Looks
Okay.
like we can proceed.
Okay. This slide requests the money that is outside of our general constitutional responsibilities for BCC facilities. It remains flat. We have not fully submitted nor discussed with your facilities team yet what our projects for the $975,000 will be for next year. We're in the process of reviewing and prioritizing, and we'll do that along with your county team. The other thing I want to note is that you will receive a supplemental spreadsheet. Mary Hope went back and did a detailed recap of the 975 since you've been funding that, so that you can see all the projects that have been funded over the years with that 975,000, the major projects. Special revenue funds are broken down here. You can see that the American Rescue Plan Act funding that we had under our $9 million agreement, that terminated within this fiscal year, so that's zero going into next year. I'll mention that the HIDA program is federal funding. The sheriff mentioned that some of these funding measures are at risk. We manage in our fiduciary for the Central Florida HIDA, which includes money that we directly benefit from, and also services that are happening within the area but are for some of the federal agencies, but we act as fiduciary, so that is the all-in number. But some of those funding numbers may adjust as we find out more at the federal level. The other thing of note here is our MOU with the Department of Children and Families. That will end this July 1st, so we have terminated that MOU. That's why it's zero going into the next budget year, and they will be moving out of the facility by the end of this month. The next slide is also special revenue funds. These are transfers from the county general revenue funds. The opioid settlement funds picked up where the ARPA money left off. It continues to fund our SCORE opioid and mental health area. It encompasses about 9 positions. 7 of them are sworn and 2 are civilian. And then we have our offset of emergency 911 funds that offsets our communication center operation, teen court, police education is for law enforcement education specifically, and then a small amount of alcohol, drug abuse funding. If there's no questions, we'll go into the
We're going to try to hold our questions till y'all get wrapped up unless there's something
divisions.
really
Okay.
pressing.
Okay, the Sheriff's Office Community Foundation, it's very important to talk about this during the budget presentation because citizens may see the Sheriff's Office involved and engaged in a lot of activities and wonder, well, how is this being funded? Who's paying for this stuff? So 8 years ago, we created a 501c3 community foundation that helps raise money throughout the community. We have an independent board of directors. They're out there hitting it to help support the Shop with the Sheriff events, the Christmas Village events, the Halloween spooktacular event that we do each and every year. Some of the proceeds also help us support those other organizations, some private, mostly nonprofit, that are looking for contributions and donations from government. A lot of the money comes from our community foundation instead of just rolling on the backs of taxpayers. This represents our various law enforcement accreditations. The icons up there basically represent a state and federal law enforcement and corrections accreditation, holding to the highest standards of policing. But in addition to that, the others represent an accreditation for our communication center, our aviation unit, and our medical department within our correction facility, as well as a shared accreditation for emergency management. There are up to 3,500 standards that independent reviews and auditors come in every 3 years or so to ensure that we have these. And we are one of the most accredited law enforcement organizations in the state of Florida, which again, something that I know our community and at least we are incredibly proud of. This is the nuts and bolts of our operation. It's going to be a breakdown, an albeit high-level breakdown of our sections and divisions, starting with the Office of Sheriff. This is the people who work directly in our office, the chiefs, the undersheriff, people who are there. You can see they're sworn. 4 positions, 7 positions. I mentioned this in my opening comments that we try to civilianize as much as we can. Again, we have administrative support positions there that work with your support staff over here as well. Chief Counsel Office, where we provide services not only to the men and women of the Seminole County Sheriff's Office, we assist our municipalities whenever we can. There are certain functions that are countywide functions, whether it's a civil process, a risk protection order, or something like that. And typically, the cities don't have dedicated police general counsels within their areas. Their general counsels are more broadly positioned, so sometimes going to somebody that can work on policing functions. They also handle forfeitures in court and all of these things, and of course, the amount of lawsuits that come in. Professional development, this is the group of people that is not them that actually work there. That's one of the graduating classes of our new academy. You've worked with us very closely to ensure that we can not only onboard the academy. I think Seminole State College has done a great job. They've really made some huge improvements over the past couple of years. But the benefit of having our own academy allows us to expedite the training process of onboarding of a deputy sheriff and a detention deputy, ultimately from a fiscal standpoint, eliminating up to 6 weeks of their required field training process. And it actually becomes cost neutral when we look at how much we were actually paying to get them through. And sometimes we would suspend the graduation or suspend the academy program on days that the college would actually close, particularly most affecting us during the last quarter of the year around Thanksgiving and Christmas and all of that. We can run our classes straight through, even on holidays here, to move forward with that. But in addition to that, professional development ensures that our workforce of 1,400, particularly our sworn and certified, are required to meet annual expectations of training. And every 4 years, they have to make sure that they recertify by taking a certain amount of hours in every single topic that you can imagine is relevant to policing. So it is much more than drive, fighting, and shooting, although driving, fighting, and shooting is key components that require annual reaccreditations. Lastly, and certainly not least, is they offer career and professional development to our civilian workforce as well. And sometimes when you have sworn and certified, sometimes you can overlook the professional development responsibility of our civilian workforce, and they offer those services there as well. Professional standards. Professional standards is, of course, a smaller unit, but this was a unit we call professional standards. It's mostly known as like internal affairs across the broad spectrum across the country. When we get complaints, when we generate initiatives ourselves, these are the people that would actually follow up, investigate, look for whether or not there's any corrective action that is required within our office. Not only do they investigate allegations of misconduct, they also work with our professional development section to look for trends, things that may need advanced training on if they're seeing deputies or officers or civilian members do or act in certain ways that may not necessarily violate policy, but bring concern to the norms, values, and customs of the agency. Then they bring that back to professional development to ensure that we're training for that. Public affairs, this is, again, a smaller unit, but this has our public information, our forward-facing community engagement, community involvement team. And on the surface, sometimes these positions can look like they're nice to have instead of need to have positions. But I think that when you look at the 40,000 hours equivalent to 20 full-time equivalents of volunteer work, of people coming out, it's this unit that's actually doing the majority of the work of coordinating volunteer, whether it's the One Initiative, it's our Community Law Enforcement Academy, it's working with Crime Watch programs or Neighborhood Watch programs, it's getting out there and engaging with the community. And by doing so, every person that has a cell phone and has a relationship with a member of our office can provide natural surveillance and report criminal activity, which again lessens the burden on our tax dollars because we don't need a deputy standing on every corner if law-abiding citizens are willing to pick up the phone and partner with us and bring our attention to problems that may be occurring within the areas. Fiscal services, as you can see, the team and the involvement. Lisa, you want to talk about this?
Well, this is Mary's team directly, and she oversees not only the financial management, the budget and the financial management, but also payroll, and that includes benefit oversight and management. We also run the material supply shop, so we're also doing all the supplies not only for the jail, but also to equip and outfit our sworn and certified staff and all of our staff throughout the agency. A lot of this area also is purchasing and contractual agreements, so they do all the purchasing process and contracts and work very closely with our legal team.
And why don't you carry over to building services as well?
Building services is a staff that mainly is assigned to the correctional facility, works very heavily with your team here at the county. They do the inside the facility repair, daily maintenance that needs to be done across the correctional facility. We also have a couple positions that we utilize to run our facilities that we lease. Then we have fleet services, and going back to Commissioner Lockhart's question, you can see the all-in cost of our fleet here is $7.5 million. That includes within the operating supplies, the fuel, repairs, changing out things such as brakes, tires, all the stuff that would go along with the fleet operation. They also handle any type of insurance claims, again, working very closely with our legal team.
I'll start with HR, and then maybe you can pick up at the end of it. I think it's important that when you look at HR, there's a couple of factors that we're experiencing in policing that really have a bearing on the work that they do. Once upon a time, somebody would come in and they would average stay for 10, 12, sometimes 25 years when they came in. So as we're experiencing a turnover rate that is 5 times the turnover rate as it was 20 years ago, where people are staying 4 or 5 years, that means HR is having to process 5 people for every 1 person that they would normally process with the work demand. And when compared to normal HR functions, I think that there's certain things that policing HR have to take into consideration, like the extra metrics that they have to go with polygraph examination. And when we do background checks, we have to knock on neighbors' doors and talk to neighbors. And we physically go and look at files from other agencies, particularly other law enforcement agencies, to make sure that nobody is slipping through the cracks and actually getting into a position of trust without doing the thorough and complete background investigation. So the time and the work demand with background checks, investigators, polygraph examinations, credit checks, going in person and talking to every agency that they work for, not just relying on a report, has become incredibly demanding. And one of the things that I've spoken about at the federal level is when there was healthy grants, there were typically healthy grants for policing professionals and try to attract people in the business. But as those numbers are affected, so are the HR numbers that are within those areas of responsibility as well.
They also handle some of the risk functions. They do workers' comp and FMLA. They also, and to tag on to what the sheriff's saying, we have a lot of compliance requirements with FDLE. They come in and check our files regularly after hiring. So they handle all of that information in our Civil Service Board, which is statutory and oversees both our certified and sworn staff and some of our civilian staff. One of the things that I want to note here and came up within our commissioner discussions and in the future we'll notate it on this slide is Human Resources Director actually oversees our law enforcement records section. So the 23 positions you see there, 9 of those are for our law enforcement records section, which takes care of all the law enforcement records plus any inquiries and public records requests within the agency. And to be fair, so that brings our HR team down to 14. We also have about 4 FTE that report under professional development with our academy. We rearranged a little bit in how we reorged some of our people, and we have a recruitment team that also does hiring responsibilities in coordination with HR within that team. So all in, dedicated to HR, it's about 18 FTE within our organization.
And the photographs are graduates of Corrections Academy and Law Enforcement Academy. That is mostly a civilian, except for one position that actually work in there.
Technology Solutions is, again, an all-in cost, so we don't allocate out unless it is a direct contract under a main division. So you can see that's $12.7 million. We also, and we've mentioned before, we have developers on our team. We actually have in-house applications for our main CAD system and for our law enforcement reporting system, which we entitle Cafe. So Technology Solutions is full service, and they handle all of our technology needs throughout the agency.
And just a note on Technology Solutions, it is very fiscally responsible to find people that are willing to serve as programmers and work for what the government is able to pay them. These people write programs and develop software packages that would cost us millions of dollars to buy off of the shelf, which is the common practice in most jurisdictions, is they don't have the capable staff that are willing to come together and write these programs. So everything that we do here, the programs that we have, the CAFE system, the shared databases between the municipalities and us, and really some contiguous areas to Seminole County, are all developed by this team that's there.
Sheriff, if I may interrupt, for the county manager, for scheduling for this morning, if it's the will of the commission to go through each department and division of the sheriff's office as we are, it looks like the sheriff's going to need probably another 40 minutes, give or take, and we've got 2 more presentations scheduled this morning. So what is the will of the board? You want to go down through each one of these broke out divisions of employees and departments at the sheriff's, or do you want to forego that, or do you want to hear all that, and let's let the other 2 that are scheduled this morning to regroup and come back this afternoon?
I mean,
I don't have a desire to go through each and every one of these. I've seen them, I've reviewed it, it's in the agenda packet. Based on what we're doing right now, we're
Chairman,
talking.
I'd be happy to speed up as well, if you'd like that as an option. Sure. I mean, I can speed up.
I mean, I'd rather have the sheriff speed up, because I think it's critical that not just us, but the public hears the presentation.
Sure. Okay. So I would release at least probably one of your presentators this morning. Okay, Sheriff, please proceed.
Yes, sir. So Seminole Neighborhood Policing is our patrol function. There are 144 people that work in various community service areas. There's 190 total sworn when you put in supervisors and canines and all of these folks. But this is the area that I mentioned during my opening remarks, that we remain relatively flat. There's the same amount of community service areas as there were 20 years ago. So this is the patrol function. 4 deputy sheriffs have a geographic area responsibility 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and that's the function of neighborhood policing, by far the most visible aspect of what we do. Patrol cars and deputies wearing uniforms like mine. Community engagement. This is a part of a small group of individuals that are, again, partnering with our foundation groups. They're making sure that others that want to volunteer, they want to give back. They're running the One initiatives. They're doing the Community Law Enforcement Academy. Every time that there is an event, whether it's a recruiting event or a different type of event, we do have recruiters and we have community engagement. So they're trying to encourage positive interaction between law-abiding citizens and members of our organization, in hopes that when they see something wrong, they pick up the phone, they call, and they report back that activity. activity. And again, a lot of people in our recruitment base, whether they're volunteer citizens on patrol or our crossing guards, come from the contacts that they have in that space. Communications, you guys want to talk about that, or I just go real fast?
You go real fast.
Yeah, so communications, we have, as you know, consolidated dispatch. There's 115 communication officers that are working up there. They are far exceeding the gold standard of answering 911 calls within the 5-second window. The majority of them, last year, they took on 800,000 calls for service and had a 98% or higher rate of answering those calls within the first 5 seconds. And I think that, you know, some of this has been recent news stories in the local area, but again, we're incredibly proud of what they're doing and how professional they are. And we've had some balance there as well, because it was incredibly difficult to recruit and retain them, but we're doing a better job with that, and they're sticking around and they're staying. Forensic services, these are scientists, sometimes literally scientists, a couple of PhD people that are doing forensic analysis of crime scenes. We of course do that for all unincorporated areas of Seminole County. We also support and supplement the municipalities when they should need it on a large crime scene. But this is typically the people that you see in the middle of the night when there's a breaking news, typically a bad news story, and they're the ones that are out there processing the scene sometimes for days. They see some of the most horrible things that any society can ever imagine. Special operations, that was one of the divisions that we consolidated with our move last year, eliminating one of those captain positions. But this is all the high-risk stuff. You see me sell this package on our behalf when we can have these folks that are required to do a certain amount of training hours. This is the package that I'm saying, the flying in the helicopter and on the boat and all of those things. Range and water, special operations, aviation, K-9, bomb squad, SWAT team, all of these high-level functions are in special operations. They also deploy, and you know, sometimes the FEMA reimbursement, I've heard the chairman talk about the FEMA reimbursement as well as other commissioners during our discussions. These are the teams that are probably largely affected by deployments to other areas within our region to offer assistance. Domestic security, again, that other division that was consolidated. Domestic security worked close on domestic and international threats. So when you get those bizarre emails that are coming to your inbox and they require somebody taking an extra look, it's typically somebody from our domestic security division. They also work very closely with school threats and assessment to have timely delivery of services. And they also have a fugitive apprehension unit that's a part of that as well. They also address gangs, and we don't have much of a gang problem here, but I think that last year, if you watched the news, there was a pretty significant thing up in the north end of the county that involved gang activity. Our gang component is under our domestic security division as well. Criminal investigations, this is all of the investigative functions, whether it's white crime investigations, white collar crime, digital forensics investigations. We have crimes that are committed against children. We have auto theft units. Some of those units are multi-agency units that municipalities come and join with us on it. But again, those are the heart of what every investigative show on TV shows, the major crimes, the call-outs, as you can see from that photograph, the crime scene. These are the people that are in a designated unit that is beyond property crimes. Property crimes is still decentralized to the regions in patrol because the information that the CSA or the neighborhood deputies have works harmoniously with the property crime investigators. Drug enforcement and behavioral services. This is what you guys have partnered with us very closely over the years, and then continue to support us through the Opioid Abatement Settlement Fund. This is what you hear us talking about largely with a 42% reduction in fatalities, a 29% reduction in overdoses, and then Seminole County still holds the record for prosecutions of first-degree murder with 35 prosecutions of first-degree murder for drug dealers. When other law enforcement agencies are working to enforce the law, we're working to actually create the law. So with the assistance of Representative Rachel Plakin and Senator Jason Broder, we've brought many of those laws to bear here. And I know Commissioner Constantine has been a national ambassador of the work that's being done here, as well as a state ambassador of doing the work there. But it's the traditional stuff. HIDA, our HIDA director of this region, has been directed as part of the big, beautiful bill. It reduces the HIDA funding by 33%. So HIDA, that offsets in hundreds of thousands of dollars with wire investigations or undercover investigations or overtime, is likely to be diminished, and that was outlined as a part of the budget. Behavioral services, of course, we have a mental health crisis, and connecting the dots, we involuntarily admit in Seminole County nearly 3,500 people per year under Florida's Baker Act law. And again, it's a big component, and we're working harmoniously with other stakeholders to include Advent Health, who's been a great partner. School safety, this is the arrangement that you guys were forward-leaning many years ago with the school board to ensure that there's a dedicated, professionally trained school resource officer or deputy on every single public school campus. Over the years, that has expanded just slightly to ensure that we have every single one of the charter schools covered. In some of the larger campuses, there's more than one. When the legislative changes were made requiring this to occur, I think we added just a couple of float positions because we saw areas of vulnerability should a law enforcement officer actually make an arrest on campus. If they leave campus to take them to the detention center or the correctional facility, that creates vulnerability. So there's a couple of float positions to ensure that there's never a time where the campuses are not covered by a police officer or a deputy. Juvenile justice, of course, we're running our detention center. We're one of 2 counties in the entire state of Florida that's running our detention center. As a part of cost-saving measures, I had a conversation recently with the Secretary of DJJ and DCF to ensure that committed kids are actually moved from our facility and moved into state custody, because what was doing is there was a bit of a delay and we were holding them longer than probably we should have, and then it's a financial burden because a lot of these kids, we're talking young kids, may require one-on-one supervision of a staff member. That should reduce our overtime usage significantly. We've already seen a huge change in that process. Probation services, of course, county probation, the transition a handful of years ago was moved from the county BCC responsibility over to us. That's one of the 5 things that we list out, along with juvenile courts, probation services, and the juvenile detention center, as well as the correctional facility. This just aligns what, again, the constitutional responsibility is to address crime and recidivism. It is a form of community corrections. So when they're out there doing that, if they violate, it is a costly process of bringing them back into the criminal justice system, greater sanctions. So I think our team is doing really, really well working with folks on the road in patrol, as well as folks in the correctional facility. Court security operations, of course, we have the 3 buildings. We have the security to our main building on Esslinger Way, and of course this building right here. The deputies that are assigned here, that all falls under the court security operations. In individual meetings, I have asked to see if there's some opportunity to save some money through the civilianization of certain positions that the team is actually looking at, and they're going to come back with a more detailed report on potentially what they're able to do with that, particularly when it comes to working magnetometers and other types of functions. I want to make sure that deputies are used for safety and security and not performing in functions that maybe a civilian can do instead of a sworn person. That saves money and allows the security of the deputies there to keep their eyes for any threats that may be developing within the area. As soon as they get back with us, we'll make sure that all the commissioners know kind of where we stand on that, because I did mention it in our private meetings.
This is correction security.
Correction security, this is our operations in our correctional facility, our detention deputies that are working within the area. holding to minimum staffing. There's less flexibility when it comes to this because a housing unit doesn't really care if you've got 75 inmates that are incarcerated or 100 inmates. It costs basically the same to keep a pod open. We've looked at ways that we can maybe consolidate. We run a population of around 1,000 at any given day. We've booked in 10,000 people per year. But if given the choice, a lot of people are choosing the law enforcement side of things. So again, having our own academy, getting people through the process, having a graduation today keeps these positions filled. But they work so incredibly hard in a very, very challenging environment, and they do the best with what they can. And this is support staff with operations. We have civilian functions, whether it's our programs. We were one of the first correctional facilities to offer medical-based treatment therapy on the inside. There's classifications, programs, a lot of civilian positions that are trying to get people out or offer programs to address recidivism. You've heard me say this a lot, rehabilitation means make what it once was. For some, they need to be habilitated as much as they are rehabilitated. So that's what that team of civilian support operations does, as well as inmate transportation and other functions like that that are necessary in moving people around. You got healthcare. Chief Spriggs mentioned cost-neutral move. Ultimately, is to get our own nursing staff that is there and hired on and brought on. We're using contractual services right now. But again, there's a lot of sick people within the correctional facility, and this is a huge responsibility and a burden. And we always do the best we can to negotiate the best contracts and the best deals. But it all centers around having the greatest quality people that are there as well.
And this is another area that we experience overtime in the detention deputy, in that when we have an inmate that has to actually be in the hospital, we have to provide 24/7 security for that inmate. So that varies depending on who's in the facility, but it is a cost that adds pressure on overtime.
Judicial services, so I covered that already, the court building. So that's the 85%. That's the breakdown of who the people are, where they're at, what they're doing. So with that, we'll yield for questions.
Thank you very much, Sheriff. We will start with Commissioner Herr and work our way the other direction.
So I'll start by saying thank you for keeping us a very safe community. I'll also, for purposes of today, not thank you as much as I'm going to thank Lisa and Mary for all the work they did to get you to this table.
They're fabulous.
It's good, because that is not an easy task, the thousands of spreadsheets and all the questions that we're asking. I'm going to work backwards through the presentation, and I'll do it by page number so you know where I am. I'm on your slide number 45. And the question is, how much are we spending out of our funds for hope and healing? I'm not even sure if that's the right bucket.
Nothing.
Nothing.
So we do not support hope and healing. We have had legislative appropriations over, I think now we're going on, 7 years maybe?
Thank you.
But nothing out of ours.
Next question is on slide 42. How many special ops packages do we have a year to give away to occupy that training space? I've always wondered this, and it just popped into my head to ask you today.
So we do. Brian, do you know the number we actually do? And as he's thinking about that, what's interesting about the special ops packages is I think the majority of the people that buy them never use them. When I come up at these events, they're like, I bought 3 of these things. So I would think what's started to happen is people walk into an event and they're like, I'm going to give a $10,000 company donation. And what I'll do is I'll just bid on this thing. I'll keep it in my pocket. So people come up to me constantly like, I bought one of these 2 or 3 years ago. But Brian, do you know the number of how many we actually do?
We do about 15 a year. That's for the full day of the experience. We also do about 10 that's either the airboat or the helicopter.
All right, so for the record, that was 15 a year full ride and 10 a year for just the partial ride. I cannot tell you how many times I have bought the spend a weekend with George Kosmak in a sailboat back in the school district days, which I never had the intention of doing. It was a couples thing, and it was the crazy, but no one ever bid on that.
Right.
Sorry, George. And I still have my certificates, though, just so. Page 38, you did mention that you have the same number in that patrol unit as we did 20 years ago. And I just want to get it on the record that due to annexation, the amount of land that we're covering in that patrol unit is smaller. So the community is just as safe with the patrol units that you have today as they were 20 years ago. And that may not have come through in that messaging.
Indeed. There is not a void in our coverage, and I know that each one of you have opened up the invitation to have those conversations, and I promise that if that were the case, I would be laying that out as well.
Yep, I will go to page 36. We spent a significant amount of time in my briefing on this because the number of people in HR is stunning, but it is not stunning when you put the 9 people in records. You guys did a great job of explaining that, but if you just look at this on this document, it jumps off the page as an opportunity. And I think we need to make sure that we all understand this is not just HR. The title of the slide is I think, understated.
And we're going to break that out in the future, Commissioner, because that was a great point.
Yep.
Very unrelated function.
9 for the record, you're also doing workers' comp and FMLA and risk, and that is the all other department. Page 21, the footnote. And I think the footnote on page 21 referenced
Thank you.
The critical capital improvements for the 25-26 are currently under review and will be submitted separately. So we all know this freaked me out. You're submitting them under the budget number that's here, not in addition to.
Correct.
Just
So
wanted to
it's
get
the
it on the record.
975 that we'll discuss with county facilities.
Got it.
And we're going to give you a recap of that throughout the years.
And then we had in our briefing, just so I can share with the board here, a discussion around benefits and looking at them, similar to what I talked about with Tiffany, although the work is already being done by the sheriff's office. And then I think I get to the 3 bigger picture questions, and that is, do you expect after this budget to come back again for a different number, similar to what happened last year?
That's a tough question to answer. I did not expect doing that.
It's a tough one to ask.
Yeah, I did not expect coming back last year. Last year, you worked with us, and I was incredibly comfortable with where we were at. And then you see what happens. And, you know, I mentioned the highest of being now $8,500 behind the highest in Seminole, but we're $5,000 behind every other municipality. I think that this has to end somewhere. I think that you can't keep going back and forth, while at the same time, I think our policing professionals deserve whatever we as citizens are willing to pay. I mean, it's an incredibly dangerous job. You turn on the news every single day, and you see an incredibly dangerous environment, and you say to yourself, who the hell's doing that job for what you can work at a Buc-ee's? I will say this, you know, it is important for me as sheriff to make sure that we remain consistent with what fair market value is. That never results as a surprise. I think that, you know, the county manager and Darren and Tim and their team have been just fabulous to work with. And I think for a good portion of this year, we've been kind of reading the tea leaves and kind of having conversations about what we can expect. So if we do, and again, there is no plans to do that, I think that we're going to be incredibly comfortable here. I can't imagine the municipalities being able to make a move again, but it will be something that we discuss in harmony. I know every one of you to be incredibly fiscally conservative and mindful of balancing the resources and support of law enforcement as well. So again, I can't predict the future, but I know that's something that we will be collaborative with.
And then, second to last question, I promise, Chairman. What will you be doing over the next 12 months to make sure we don't end up here? I feel like we're in the nuclear armament race of level setting on bonuses and salaries, and we maybe can't have as much influence outside of our county as we can within our county, but we really need your help. And you mentioned mayors and managers, but that's mayors and managers, and we do need help to try to level this out.
Yeah, it's, I and our team have a fabulous relationship with all of the chiefs of police. I think up until this point, all of us serving as the best leaders for our team as we can possibly be. We've been advocating for, quite frankly, what they deserve. But there's a little bit of, I'm here, you're there, it's back and forth, back and forth. Not only locally here, it's across the state and probably starting in Tallahassee where it's been disproportionate reward for people in policing, which was the catalyst for making people move. But I will tell you that I will do everything that I can to create chemistry and camaraderie and open communication. We have a monthly chiefs meeting where we talk about these things. As a chief moves in a direction, the first thing that chief does is send a text message out to our group. So again, for the record, I think that every city that has adjusted the pay for their police officers, I think that they deserve it. And I was one of the first people to send them a text message back in response congratulating them on the success. But I do think that we can maybe come together in some type of lockstep and uniformity. So if we're competing, we're not competing against each other. We're maybe competing outside of regional sources.
And maybe it's chiefs and managers, so that there's alignment around the senior management as well as the chiefs. And then the last question that I have, and we discussed this in briefing as well, is what happens if we say no? Just walk us through statute 30.49.
Yeah, so if you say no, then what the responsibility would be is either I adjust or you outline areas of our budget that you would like to see cut. I will not adjust from this because adjusting this would compromise services of that 85%. It's important to me that we're doing and we're looking for ways to save money, and we will continue to do that. But with the civilianization of as many positions as we can, and I think that I lightly touched on it from judicial, that there may be some other opportunities of cost savings there. Consolidation of 2 divisions into 1 division, elimination of a captain, evaluation of new technology that comes in, if it can actually make people obsolete. It would be then incumbent upon you to outline what that I just presented you would want to cut, which again creates, I understand, creates an incredibly difficult position for you. But I've cut as much as we feel that we can cut without compromising public safety. And I know that more than 50%, as it's laid out year after year, of the general funds and the tough decisions that you have to make is influenced significantly by what I've just laid out and our team has just laid out over the past couple of hours. So I will hold to what we've done. I really read through that statutory requirement of Chapter 30. And I say what's reasonable and necessary for the effective and efficient running of the office, because that means something to me. As a constitutionally elected official, that means something to me. And if I could have come in leaner, I would have, I promise you. I understand the difficult position that you're in.
Thank you.
And if I can add to that, I think the coming back for additional funds, since we submitted this budget on May 1st, salary changes have already been significant within those couple of months. We have heard you. We have also gone back and we have looked very hard. We have a lot of things in the works that we're trying to do to reduce some costs in some areas. But every dollar that we save, we're going to put toward the effort of keeping the market value where it needs to be. So my conveyance here is that we're not stopping. We're still looking at efficiency measures. But that doesn't allow us to reduce our budget. It actually allows us to keep within the market of the salaries.
Okay with that?
Good.
Commissioner Lockhart?
So we're not going down the line, all right.
I'll mix it up a
You're
little bit.
changing it up. All right, fabulous. So I had nuclear arms race written on my sheet, and I scratched through it because I thought, with everything going on in the Middle East right now, Amy, that would be a really bad comparison. So thank you for saying it, so that I didn't have to.
Or maybe I shouldn't have said it.
No, it's okay, because that is exactly how I felt. And we've had this conversation multiple times. It reminds me very much of the travel nurse scenario that we had for years, where it was just, and again, not that the people in these positions don't deserve it. I'm not sure, just like teachers, that we can ever pay them enough for putting their lives on the line. But there is a limit to what the community can afford. And I guess we're about to learn what that is, because we're getting feedback already about the total budget. And of course, our friends in the media don't exactly dissect exactly what is going on with the budget and the numbers and where it's coming from. You just see the headline. And so, a lot of the emails that I'm getting are asking us to evaluate all of the other departments and things that are coming later on for us to talk about. But really, truly, and I'm glad, Commissioner Herr, you brought up what happens if we say no, because I don't want to be the sheriff. I don't want to I don't want to armchair quarterback the job that you do. I think you and your team do an amazing job, and as an elected official whose expertise is not in law enforcement, to think that I could go through your budget and say, well, this is where I think you should cut, I think would be very foolish. So there's a trust factor involved in these conversations, for sure. Talk to me about compression. With these changes, what would normally happen in most organizations is that we would say, well, we're changing, and then next year we have the $10 million increase to fix compression. So how are you going to avoid that issue, or are you?
So let me start, and then I'll turn it over to Lisa. This process is early for us because I have not been in front of our members, and of course our members will watch this video back and they'll want to know, what has the sheriff said, what has he done. The pace, as influenced by fair market value of law enforcement, has outpaced the fair market value for corrections. And I think that somewhere down the path, we have to take a look at where we're at based upon commensurate positions within the same type of field to determine where we're comfortable at. In addition, some of the comparisons that we've made here were blanket adjustments across the board, when our adjustments are largely, almost exclusively, but largely at the rank of entry-level position of deputy sheriff and detention deputy. The salary adjustments are there to the starting pay. That creates a little bit of compression, particularly with the first couple of years where you have to adjust for that, because as I laid out in my initial remarks, what has even become more difficult than the competitiveness within our local area is these counties and cities that are not only paying for experience, so you don't lose any of your seniority, you get a signing bonus. And I think that, we haven't mentioned counties, but, Pinellas County is offering a $70,000 signing bonus for a 3-year commitment in addition to experience pay. So you are a 3 or 4 year person. Normally, you would never have any incentive, but now you do, because you're not going to lose any time and grade. You're not going to lose any money. You're going to stay in the same retirement system, and then you can get a $70,000 jump. That's got to end. It's actually incentivized people to jump and leave and go around to different agencies. You have worked very closely with us over the years, and we're proud of Lisa and Mary and the team to really create compression in a way that makes sense. And for those that may watch this back and not understand what compression is, it's somebody who works in a job for 2 years should make a little bit less than somebody who works in the same job for 5 years. And sometimes if you only adjust to the bottom, you can wash out any experience pay for your veteran members of the organization. So what we've done is we've included in here, and again, we haven't laid this out because I haven't been able to speak back home to our team, some adjustments at top-end salaries as well. And this doesn't really affect that much of the ranking people within the agency. But I'll turn it over to Lisa or Mary for a more sophisticated summary of that.
So the sheriff did a great job of explaining it, and this budget does include some adjustment for compression. Because over the past few years, the starting salary has significantly increased. What's also happened in the profession, and it's happened in other professions that we've talked about over time, when you get into market competitiveness, what happens is the starting goes up, but the back end or the max does not increase to the tune of what the starting's going. So basically, when we're doing our adjustments, that starting salary is going up, the max is going up a little, and the actual range of the profession is shortening. So it's becoming more concentrated. So back to what the sheriff was saying, back in 2018, when we really did a large-scale adjustment and redid our pay plan, we had more of a disparity between somebody who was maybe 3 years and somebody that was 5 years. Now, because you've continued to crunch up that beginning salary, you have less of a disparity, but we aren't having them all make the same. We do have a little bit in there for compression, so there is a distinction. And then really emphasizing what the sheriff said, our competition is not only starting salary, it is the experienced officers, and that is what we look at when we're doing the pay plan and the compression adjustments. We're looking at what can my 2-year deputy go make in an organization that is paying for experience. And we really, really need to adjust the people that are 2 to 5 years to compensate for that, because right now it's a significant difference. It's not only starting pay.
Okay. I'm also glad we talked about neighborhood policing, because that is something that I think my neighbors, since we're talking neighborhood policing, they believe impacts them the most about law enforcement. All of the other things that you do, that we know you do, that no one else sees, that help to keep them safe. Folks in neighborhoods look at who's speeding down my street, was my bike stolen, things like that that are that I would imagine involve neighborhood policing. So I'm really glad we talked about that a little bit more. Talk to me about how unfunded mandates impact your organization, and can you identify for us what some of those may be?
Man, we can go back and try to pull some things that have happened over the last few years, but really in law enforcement, I mean, I've heard Article 5 thrown around a lot. I've heard CJIS discussed at these meetings. We're under FDLE standards. We're under so many compliance standards, but probably the biggest area that has to operate within rules and regulations, and the sheriff may be able to expound on this, is the correctional facility and how they deal with the inmates and the things that we have to do there.
Yeah, as sheriffs across the country, we have greater flexibilities in rejecting some of these things, but I will say that as the federal system leans up and the state system leans up, it makes it incredibly difficult to maintain the level of services if you're losing resources. I'll give you an example of if HIDA reduces its budget federally by 33%, and I've spoken with our senators, and I've spoken to the DEA administrator and the heads of these organizations. But if they lean up federally by 33%, Well, either somebody's got to make up the difference, or you have to compromise services. That's where it comes down to. So I think that, maybe an unfunded mandate is a stretch for kind of what we do, but there is absolutely a void as people start to eliminate positions and grant opportunities and things that help offset the work that we do, so we're then left with picking it up. There is good contracts with our federal partners. We've housed for the U.S. Marshals. We charge them the day rate of the true all-in cost associated with that. I know that there's conversations about whether or not local facilities will kind of expand to the immigration concern as bed space becomes occupied and unavailable. We're not there yet. Seminole County is not a partnering organization when it comes to the housing of illegal immigrants. We do work with ICE. We have the 287G program. That has had zero impact on our budget. Quite frankly, we had all of that just 10 or 15 years ago. So it hasn't adjusted anything that we do. But should local facilities, because there is some conversation about whether or not the 67 counties could help offset should there be a need, we would get an actual cost associated from the federal partners. But I think that to answer your question, as federal grants are drying up, as state assistance may slow down, somebody's got to pay for that. And it's not only policing, there are other functions that we, as leaders in this county, have to be aware of. I think that, we look at our hurricane response, what Alan Harris and his team does at emergency management, what the fire chief does within the communities. I mean, all of this stuff cannot be compromised, and it has to be funded some way, somehow.
Okay. Thank you. You touched on a little bit talking about the reimbursement for the marshals. For the other types of services, and I know we have agreements with our cities, or maybe it's even a constitutional mandate to cover law enforcement within the bounds of the county, but when we go out of the county, or when we utilize equipment or personnel outside of the bounds of Seminole County, is there a reimbursement function from those other entities, whether it's local, state, or federal? I know we talked a little bit about FEMA reimbursement, but what about for, if we have a piece of equipment that another neighboring county doesn't have and they need to utilize it, do we get reimbursed for that? How does that work?
I'll let Lisa speak to the more administrative aspects of it, but I think that regionally it is mutually beneficial to share our resources, because I think we call upon other contiguous jurisdictions as much as they call upon us, maybe even more. If we're doing fire suppression, let's say, and we have our helicopters up and we're doing Bambi bucket water drops on the fires, and if there's surrounding areas that, can come in and assist us, whether it's Volusia County or Orange County, the two we typically lean on as much, I think it's kind of this mutual back and forth, almost like if you were going to go out to lunch with a partner and you pick up the tab one day and they pick up the tab the next day. I think that a lot of it kind of goes that way. There are certain resources through the Florida Sheriff's Association that are shared resources that you have to sign commitments and contracts to hold and maintain a piece of property or an item. That is a shared asset. I don't think that we're holding much of those shared assets, but there's sometimes it's a shared asset where it's implied that if the state's going to help funding with it, or the Florida Sheriff's Association through our task force model, that will do that. The biggest concern that we have, and the biggest financial burden, is the time delay for FEMA reimbursement. Lisa can speak to that a little bit.
So yes, to answer your question, it is reciprocal. We work with the contiguous areas. They work with us. There's no boundary, right, to the bad guys, so think of it that way also. But as the sheriff said, there is also those federal grant opportunities, and assets are placed with different counties, and they're held. I think you have some of that within your fire department too, for specific purposes. So we are able to utilize those, or they are able to utilize ours. But no, we don't have any direct charge. If we do If we are deployed to help another community in a disaster, that's usually coordinated through FDLE, and then we seek reimbursement through FEMA, through the state. But that's specifically coordinated through the sheriffs.
And in the meantime, the salaries and the overtime that are being paid for those individuals is impacting your budget. You're waiting for reimbursement.
It is, but the nice thing about, if you're deployed outside of the area to assist another community, you are able to reimburse yourself for backfill positions. So in doing that, we do, if we have to incur overtime to backfill a position because somebody is deployed and we're now down staff, we get to reimburse all of that. Plus, we get to obviously reimburse ourselves for the equipment that we deploy with them.
Okay. One last question has to do with leases of facilities. We had a little hiccup this last year. I think we worked through that, but it drew to our attention that we've got a lot of leases, facilities leases, buildings out and around the county, and I think the lawyers have had conversations about who should be holding these lease agreements, and I don't know where we are with that, but that might be one area where we could partner together a little bit more cohesively, so that we can drive those costs down if possible and co-locate and collaborate on that. Can you give me an update on where we are with some of those conversations?
I'll start, then you go. I know the county manager and I have had, as well as Lisa, great conversations about his interest in moving down with a real estate function on behalf of the county, and we want to be great partners in that. I mean, you guys have always been incredibly generous with us. My philosophy has always been, I don't need lavish buildings and all of these things. I need a space where community can come together, that we can deploy from, that we can provide services. I'd rather, for us, focus on our services out there in the community. There are certain functions that really need space, whether it's undercover operations, training space, and all of those things. So, although we haven't gone too far down, I think that we were open to the idea of doing whatever we could do to be a good partner with that.
And if I could, as you know, we just hired our real estate manager that you all graciously approved in the budget this year. We got our new team set up. And so that's one of the first tasks that we are looking at, is all of our leases that we have, including our constitutional. So that's a big project this year that we're going to be reviewing and looking at.
All right, great. Thank you so much. Thank you. That's all I have for now.
Commissioner Constantine, I want to point out for those who have to depart on time, it's 10 after 12, so we probably won't get any more presentations before 12:30.
Thank you very much, and I want to just start out with asking a few questions and then maybe some comments here. Chief Spriggs, explain to me again, because I didn't understand, because I heard 1.5 million, and I looked at the difference, and it was like 4.6 million increase. Explain to me more about the retirement contributions, please.
The 1.7 million that I was referring to was specific to the increase this year that was made by the legislature to the contribution rate. Florida retirement within our budget has increased more than that, because when you increase wages, obviously you're paying the rate. Currently, the rate for high risk is 35.2%, starting July 1st. So when we increase wages, obviously it compounds the increase on the FRS, and that is paid on all wages, including overtime.
Okay, and explain to me the overtime, the $2.7 million increase in overtime. I mean, it went from, something like 7 million to 10 million approximately. Explain, that to me, please.
So this is not something that happened from the current budget to this budget, it has been occurring. So our run on overtime has been significant over the last few years. Coming before you, we try to be very fiscally conservative, and every year, Mary can tell you, when we look at the budget, I always go, we can't come in with that high of an overtime increase. We have been able to offset that with other savings in our budget throughout the years. We've quite honestly, we're talking about FEMA, been fortunate that sometimes we have the storms, because that encompasses some of those operation times that you may have overtime in normal situations, and we're getting reimbursed for it. So what I will tell you is that we have just covered barely over the last few years the overtime that we have been incurring. And with the increase in wages and with the vacancies that we've shown you, since '22, our operational, we call it our operational vacancy rate, meaning that we currently have people in training, so we're paying for them as a deputy recruit, we're paying for them to go through training once they're sworn in, and you can again look at that supplemental information. It's a long period of time that this occurs. When you get to the point where your operational vacancies are at a point where, as the sheriff, in overtime, so it's significantly increased our overtime. The other thing that we have had the pleasure of being able to offset some of the increases that we've had to make over the last few years in inmate medical and also overtime is that we have housed for Pasco County some of their inmates. And so we have made some money that has offset the overtime and the inmate medical function over the past few years, with Pasco County being dependent on us in part until their jail is built. That will no longer be the case because their facility is being finalized.
Thank you. I believe that Commissioner Herr asked the question about the experiences, and I think it was 15 full and 10 partial. Was I to understand that that is now part of the foundation that you have established, or is it still coming out of operations and costs?
So the staff is coming out of operations and costs. The foundation is running by an independent board of non-sheriff's office employees, but the monies that they raise from that group go to offset Kids House and Boys and Girls Clubs and these other things, and then fund those larger scale operations that are forward-facing public. The community engagement team, the number that you saw there, they're typically doing our Community Law Enforcement Academy. They're out at Walmart, I think today and tomorrow, for various fundraising events. They're facilitating a program called One Initiative that goes into the communities, that provides a week-long experience within the sheriff's office, the operations of the sheriff's office, and that typically results in a handful of people from those groups either onboarding as a crossing guard or serving as a volunteer. Those circles and those events are the largest volunteer base that we have, that represent that 40,000 hours that we had last year. But they are on the county payroll.
Thank you for that. My fellow commissioners, Commissioner Herr and Commissioner Lockhart, have really delved into a lot of issues, and I appreciate it because a number of them needed to be pointed out and everything. On this one, one of the things that I think Commissioner Lockhart said is that I don't want to be the sheriff. I don't want to run your business. And you and I have had a number of conversations, and I think you know how much I value our relationship. But those conversations have been very animated and to the point, because we are looking at, as you know, this is an extremely difficult year when we look at all the budgets things. And without trying to run the office, I would just ask if that potentially in the foundation could be looked at as potentially not coming from the general revenue or the budget. And again, I want to thank you for the work that you do. I want to thank all the staff, all the people. But we're in a situation right now where I call it shared sacrifice. And we've talked about that. And in the course of this, it's hard for me to go back to the citizens of Seminole County and say that we have to increase revenues until I have looked at every single budget of every single item, and everybody, in my opinion, is in shared sacrifice. And I heard what you said, and I agree with you that I do believe that you have gone back, you have tried to cut costs, but we all know that the vast, vast majority, I don't even know the number, but it's got to be in the 90% or more of the increases that you're asking for is in personnel. And not blowing smoke, but you are a great communicator. And I believe strong, you and I are on so many boards together, and I see how much value you have and how much status you have with your fellow sheriffs, chiefs, et cetera, not only in this county, but the state and the nation. And we are in, somebody said nuclear, we're in a sick cycle that's not sustainable. And each and every, whether it be Pinellas County giving $70,000 or a city in Seminole County increasing over yours, and quite frankly, I think the way that you run your operation, I probably would take a little bit less to work for you than I would some of the cities, honestly. But I look to you to say, how are we going to stop this cycle? And it's been said by others, but I guess I'm putting a challenge on you as a friend and as a colleague and as somebody that I really admire in what you have done, to say, we've got to stop this. We've got to find a way that, we are looking at how we can change this. We have had, in the last 2 years, $30 million additional dollars of revenue that have come into this county. You have requested in 2 years $30 million of new dollars. Every single dollar of new revenue, and I can't challenge it. I can't challenge what you're asking for. I get it. But every single dollar that we're getting is going to, in theory, to the sheriff's department. And therefore, if we maintained no increase at all with anybody else, which is, we can't do it, but if we, because all the costs are rising, salary, whatever you want to do, but mostly construction, everything, everybody else would have to take a zero base. And I'm just, as I say to every single person that I have talked to in this, every single constitutional, and I will be talking to all of the others as I have talked to the county manager over and over again on this thing. It's a thing about shared sacrifice. And I'm not asking people to cut their budget. I'm asking people to ask for less of an increase. I'm not, everybody says, well, I can't cut my budget. Well, no, I'm not asking you to cut your budget. I'm asking you to add everybody, not just you, Sheriff, but we're at this point right now. This is the tipping point right here. 56% of the budget of the county goes to public safety. And I'm saying, at some point, I'm asking everyone to cut their increases. Just a little bit less increase. And I'm asking you the same. And I know the realities. Commissioner Herr asked what happens if we say no. Not only it's unrealistic for me to even think, and I know that you're doing what you think is right, and if you had to, you would, if you felt that we were not giving you the resources you need, you'd go to the governor, and I understand, you get it, okay? And I also understand that once we give you the budget, $196 million, that you can move it anywhere you want to, by law. This is not, and I know you have been very good about not doing that, and I appreciate that, and you have been, a partner, and you have been, you have shared in this pain, and I get it, I know that. But at the same time, I also know that in that $96 million, you can move it anywhere, occurring, reoccurring. You can go back, and we all understand non-reoccurring to reoccurring and what that implies in the next budget. So I respect for you for what we did, for what you've done, your staff. I appreciate that you are coming in and saying, I need this to protect the citizens. And I'm just saying, as we continue to go through this process, and we're not making any final decisions today, as we continue to go through this process, keep in mind whatever you can do and sharpen the pencils again on shared sacrifice. And I guess this is a good time to tell the county manager, my opinion is that, and I don't know what forget about the sworn officers, but everyone else, I don't know what anybody has, it's not in the budget what they're asking for increases in salaries, but I think the whole, again, outside of what we're talking about with the officers, I think everybody should have the same increase, whatever that is, 2%, 4%, whatever we come to. I think that we all county employees should have the same increase, not one having higher than the other. I'm just going to finish with saying, Sheriff, thank you very much. I've really enjoyed the debate, the discussion with you and I privately. I look forward to working with you again on all of our other boards that we're on. Yep. But I am once again, and I'm not asking you to push back on me. I'm stating facts. I'm just asking you to please continue to sharpen your pencil as we go through this process.
Well, Commissioner, thank you. And all of you have been tough as hell, actually, which shows that you're good stewards of your responsibility in advocating for the people. And I expect that actually we walk away from those conversations saying this is exactly, what should happen in this process. And there's not a moment that we drafted up this thing and we walked and looked at ourselves and said, we feel great about this. We absolutely know what this means. But like in my opening comments, it is driven by factors that are outside of our reach, even here in Seminole County alone. And the cost of gas at Wawa is influenced largely by the cost of gas at Racetrack. And if you're way out of whack, nobody buys gas at your station. And I know it's a parable and it's going back and forth, but we're trying to attract and retain and preserve the quality of life that we have here, and we have fallen out of balance. The only thing that we can cut, and we will continue to look at positions, to the Commissioner's point, to civilianize, to eliminate if we can. Those crime prevention positions actually allow us to eliminate some sworn positions when we get law-abiding citizens kind of involved and engaged in part of the process. But each one of you have asked us to sharpen our pencils, to take another deep dive, to take a look, and I can promise you that consolidation, civilianization, elimination of a captain, reevaluating every position that comes in, seeing if technology can move forward, offsetting the budget with grants and collaboration. We will continue to do that, not just now and through this budget process, but we make that a part of our everyday average practice. Lastly, as a citizen, I want my taxes to be as low as possible. But I also want to have services. I want to be protected. government exists for the things that we're providing, not just at the sheriff's office, but many people who are represented in this room. And I think that our citizens stand behind our men and women that are out there protecting and serving, whether in fire, police, or military. And any person only has to watch the news for a few minutes to realize it's been a tough 10 years for people in this business. And our community has come together not just with words, but with action. And I think that started in the Florida legislature. It started with Governor DeSantis advocating and pushing, and it was followed by folks like you meeting the call each and every year. So I stand committed. I stand firm on looking for ways that we can even sharpen the pencil, but I feel that we have come in as lean as we can without compromising services. And I think it would be disingenuous for us to appear here today if we did not feel that we were in that position.
Anything else, Commissioner? Commissioner Delary, I'll let you go ahead and get started. Commissioner Herr has to depart pretty soon.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
12:30.
First of all, Sheriff, thank you. Thank you for your presentation. I want to thank you and your staff. I've had quite a bit of conversations with you and your staff over the past couple of months in great detail with the budget. We spent quite a bit of time going over the budget in my office, and I know that Lisa and her staff has spoken to me many times about the budget throughout the past couple of months, if not the year. And I want to thank you for doing that. You've heard this from all of us. Thank you for keeping the crime rate as low as it's been and keep on reducing it. One of our primary concerns here in this county is safety, not just from the law enforcement side, but from fire side. So I don't want to just focus just on law enforcement. But since you are the law enforcement side of it, I will focus just on law enforcement here. I think you do an incredible job. I think all your men and women of the Sheriff's Department do an incredible job, so thank you. One of the biggest issues that you have, as well as we do, is salaries. I've heard some of the cities have raised their entry-level position in law enforcement. Have all the cities finished with theirs, or is it?
I think there's one city that has not set theirs.
Which is?
I believe it's Oviedo.
Okay.
Every other city has a starting salary of $5,000 higher than us. The city of Sanford has a starting salary of $8,500 higher than us.
So you feel comfortable with the salaries that you presented to us so far?
I do. I think it keeps us within fair market value.
I say that because I want to make sure that we are properly funding law enforcement. I don't think anyone here wants to defund law enforcement. I don't think anyone's ever said that. I don't think anyone's making that move to do that. So let the record show that we, all five of us, are not trying to defund law enforcement. We're just asking questions.
Sure.
And I think it's important, as you stated many times here today, it's important for us to have an open exchange of not just questions, but dialogue and asking, and you informing us. So thank you for doing that, and thank you for being as clear as you have. In one of your slides, and I think it's slide 21, I don't know what slide in the whole packet it is, but it talks about critical capital improvements, and you talked about the jail. We've had a couple of studies of the jail. I know we had a study about, and I'm guessing it was about maybe 10 years ago, and it was redone again. Where are we with all the critical infrastructure of the facility? And I just want to make sure that there's nothing that we're not totally up to speed with, because I don't want to have a budget where we're talking about critical improvements on this page of $975,000. Are we done with all the critical infrastructure of that facility, or is there still more outstanding?
So I'll start, Commissioner, and I'll turn it over to Lisa for follow-up. The reports have shown
and
that
just clarification, this is our facility that you're using?
Yes.
Okay.
County facility that you're occupying and we're running on your behalf. Right. Those surveys have come back in layman's language of critical need of repair in certain areas of infrastructure, at least to the older portions of the jail. We have newer sections of the jail that are operating just fine. Those are the expansions. But the more traditional pod area, particularly the Control 2 area, as we call it, I believe it was built in the late 80s, has critical improvements that we spend over $1 million a year just trying to maintain. Important things: electricity, plumbing, the doors working properly, and all of those things. So when you look at a correctional facility, there's also a cost savings to a more modern facility. Now, for the record, I'm not advocating for a new facility, but responding to the question of the amount of money that we use each year to patch up problems to ensure that we can push this further down the road. The new design of the correctional facility is less staff intensive because it's open dormitory style of housing, which ultimately allows for greater interaction, greater visibility, and from a fiscal standpoint, less staff to actually run a dormitory than it does a more traditional pod, linear type of correctional environment. I know you've built correctional facilities personally, so you're very familiar with this.
Legally, I've done a couple. I've not been inside of them from your perspective, but...
Not yet, anyway.
Not yet.
So Commissioner, you're correct. We had an assessment study done a couple times. I think the one that we have right now might be approximately 4 or 5 years old. The study pretty much says the same thing. We know what we're dealing with at the jail. I want to make sure that we clarify that what we have here is the ongoing operating and maintenance, the $2 million. The $975 critical capital improvements is just the portion of your budget that we handle through our facilities staff, and that can be things that the main, and you'll get the recap of the projects. The largest project we've ever done is the door project, which is all controlled through a system and was all reinstalled and actually is being completed right now as we speak. We've also renovated the kitchen. It also includes large capital improvement items, mainly within the kitchen. We just ordered and are replacing the freezers within the facilities, which also have to be professionally installed. So they're very large ticket items, and that's what's being spent out of that funding. In addition, we do security cameras, not only for the correctional facility, but also for the courthouses. Now, again, we're working in tandem with county staff, so sometimes when you're doing like the CJC renovation that'll start, some of the camera system project will be within that project. So when your facility staff comes before you, they may also talk about projects within the jail. They're going to do the main structural systems of the building. They're responsible for the air conditioning, the main plumbing systems, the electrical systems, the roof. So, which there are challenges there. So I don't want you to think that this number here is the all-in number. It's just the portion that we're utilizing to do stuff really operationally within the facility that are large ticket.
I'll be asking facilities when they come up in front those same questions. So they're having a little quick preview right now. So thank you. So I appreciate that. That's just from your perspective. There's other items that could be potentially critical that you're not addressing.
We are in the process of reviewing. I have not been briefed on it. Our facilities manager, Joe Fenwick, works closely with county staff. We intend on reviewing what we have and then sitting down with the county staff and kind of coming up with what is the plan for next year. Joe speaks with your staff almost daily, I assure you, because there's a lot of stuff that goes on at the correctional facility. So we just need to get together and really prioritize those projects and bring them forward.
Okay, thank you. Again, Sheriff, as we all sit up here, we want to keep the millage rate and the budget as low as possible. You even said that yourself, as we all do. As we move forward, the BCC vested services, which is outside your control, that we're asking to contract with you. I'd like to be asking our county staff what those services are, and are there any services there that are on those that are partly responsibility of some of the 7 cities? Because there are. Dispatch is one of them. I mean, I remember dispatch, the 7 cities used to do it. And it wasn't until the late 90s, early 2000s that we consolidated them all. And so at some point, I know I'll be asking our staff to look at those as well. So Sheriff, I want to thank you and your staff for your leadership, keeping us safe, and look forward to continue working with you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, a lot of things have been asked and a lot of things have been said, so I don't know that I need to go into any of those any further. I want to sincerely thank you and your team for the amount of time that you've spent with me and going over a lot. I would just note a lot of things have been discussed. I would note that you are asking for staffing for your current FTEs, which is approximately 42 or 41 below the 2023 level, which in our discussions goes to show why the increase in overtime, goes to show the trouble in the market and what the market pressures have come to bear on this. There was some discussion about, you know, the arms race has to stop. That's market pressures. They're cyclical in nature. 3 years, 4 years from now, it'll be maybe engineers. 5, 6 years after that, it'll be another profession. This is not something that is a novel idea in the world of having to hire professionals or experts to do a job. I do, however, believe that you have done a wonderful job, and I think with the academy process, I think this puts the taxpayers in a much better space of retention and cost savings, which to me goes to show your concern for the taxpayers' dollars by bringing that in to your own ability to oversee that, fast track that, retain those individuals, should eventually start to wane on the overtime costs and the cost to recruit and keep those people employed. As far as what's going on in our own county, with one municipality doing something and this one goes up 3,000, this one goes up 5,000, the market pressures will come to bear there as well. There will come a time where it's no longer affordable. And I think that we as a county with our 7 cities should be wise enough to understand that there probably should be some very candid conversation about consolidation of law enforcement with the 7 cities as well as the county. My perspective is the sheriff's office as the lead agency and the top elected official, law enforcement official in our county is Sheriff Lima. We have to back up all other municipalities as well as they back us up in those scenarios. We have the depth of manpower and woman power as well as all those critical aspects that a lot of the cities don't have. So I think at some point there's going to have to be some very candid conversation about what consolidation may look like. We've been through that with our fire service. I think all but 2 cities now have had that consolidation. And I get it. Each city is proud to have their own law enforcement, their own fire department. It is something that is outward facing that most citizens embrace. And they may not want to give that up. But I think there is a path and a way to do that. And I think that conversation will likely be forced upon us to have as the market pressures come to bear. And finally, I know you and I have spoke about this before, is Chad Wilkie has finally got our Ford Motor Company fleet warranty program in the hopper. And this is another aspect of working together between the Sheriff's Office and the BCC. This will not only save taxpayers time and money, but long-term is a vast benefit to not only the county as taxpayers, but we have those crime-fighting vehicles in the field instead of sitting somewhere waiting to be serviced or repaired. And hopefully we can move forward with that. But I won't take any more time. There's a lot of things I could say. Again, I sincerely appreciate the time you and your staff took with us, with my office. And I look forward to working with you in the future on continuing great law enforcement, on behalf of the men and women of Seminole County. So thank you all very much.
Thank you, and I want to thank all of you for your time, your effort, your energy, not just during this budget cycle, but each and every year. I know you all to be true ambassadors of the work that's being done on behalf of our county, but more directly, the citizens that have elected each one of us into office. And I want to commend Darren Gray and his team. I mean, we've had such a fabulous relationship, whether it's his attorney, Kate, or, Tim working in finance, and a lot to be proud of. And this is a difficult year. And you're asking a lot of tough questions. And lastly, I want to thank Lisa and Mary and their team, because they do such remarkable work. And as you can see, it's a complicated, I don't know how many pages are here, but there's a lot. There's a lot of stuff here. But lastly, I want to thank the municipalities, the chiefs of police in the cities, and the way that we come together here. It is just a benefit to the citizens, regardless if they live in a city jurisdiction or unincorporated areas of the county. And I think that that's reflected with our reduction of crime, while at the same time we're working to save lives in addressing those underlying conditions that lead people down the path to commit crime in the first place. And I think that our job this year is harder than probably years past. But we all took an oath to serve our community, and preserving the quality of life that our citizens have expected and deserved is the most important thing. So again, I know we went long, and I appreciate your patience, and see you soon.
Right. Thank you all very much. We shall be adjourned till 1:30.